what happens if we walked into like a role-playing game? Everyone's like very queer and very like fantastical, and we were like, amazing, let's make a medieval fantasy. We wanted to keep it having a message, and we were like, let's involve politics in this. But I think they employ like 100 plus like actors. They have like a whole story that follows throughout. If anyone wants to join Carnifolk, they can literally just like talk to one of us and be like, how do I get involved? I played Marvin the Mushroom Man. He plays Spud the Potato. That people loved it. It was like a very quick transition in which is like, holy crap.
People want to do well quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's possible. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Movement Theories podcast. Today we are joined by Xander, who is a student at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. Xander is a first year there and also has his own drama theatre company thing that we're going to hear lots more about. You're also from South Africa? South African?
Yeah, I am. I'm British South African.
Which I think potentially might have some influence.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Which we'll cover as well. And then we'll go into talking about Carnifolk, which is the theatre company that you've put together. Co-founded?
Co-founded.
That you've co-founded.
It's a community event.
A community event, yeah. It sounds super interesting. So, my name's Josh. Welcome to the Movement Theories podcast.
You nailed that intro.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Movement Theories podcast. Today we are joined... Oh my days, I just forgot. Xander! There we go. My brain. I mean, there's just so much to talk to you about. You're a very interesting person, which is why you're on the podcast. I only get interesting people on the podcast.
Well, thank you.
So you could do it.
Yes. Yeah, so you're at Royal Central now, but you started Carnifolk beforehand. Yeah. And Carnifolk, like, where's that name come from?
So, I'll start from the founding of Carnifolk, because it's saying that we're the co-founder, saying I'm the co-founder, and the other co-founders, Jake, Raina Blair, makes it sound too much like it's just the two of us. It's definitely something that we've devised and came up with communally.
Yeah.
So I worked at this pub, the Volunteer Tavern in Bristol, and they weren't. There was a few days in the week that they weren't doing particularly well, and I was like, okay, well, could we maybe do some events on some of those days? And they're like, yeah, we just don't really have anything. And I was like, cool, well, could I maybe do something on one of those days? And they were like, yeah, sure. And so they said, yeah, sure, like, come up with something and then propose it to us. And so I was like, okay, this is Tuesday and Wednesday. I was like, on one of the days, I want something that's a bit like lower effort. And so I was like, cool, I'll do like an open mic. And so I started hosting this open mic. And it was really, really wholesome to like, well, at first it was really hard work because you couldn't get anyone to come on.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah. And then like eventually people started getting more comfy.
Yeah, like once you've settled, kind of, you've got a reputation for yourself, then it's a little bit easier. But it's that first process of getting started.
The first one was horrendous.
Yeah.
We had like, I got all my family and friends to come.
Oh.
Well, not family, but all my friends to come.
Yeah.
And it was like, so there's a really good turnout. And then I went up and I'd written this poem as like an introduction, and I had a few people that all agreed that they were going to come on, and I was like, oh yeah, like so excited, and like thank you everyone for coming, and it was like all wholesome and warm, and I had like a playlist that was like playing in the background, and like
very nice.
Yeah, we had the whole like setup, and I was like, okay, cool, and I was like, right, first up, and then I introduced one of the people that was waiting to come up, and they were like, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah, no worries. Right, secondly, we're going to have this person. They were like, mm-mm. And I was like...
Oh, man.
And then, like, they had, like, 3 or 4 people. I was like, cool, 3 or 4 people. And then after that, like, people probably naturally come up. Because we've been advertising it.
Yeah, what are you doing open mic for? Was this just poems or singing or...
This was just open mic for anything.
Anything. Comedy?
Yeah. Nice. It's still running there at the moment.
But you don't run that anymore?
No.
You've moved on. Bigger, better things. Royal Central.
Yeah, I mean, it was a sad goodbye. But yeah.
I'm sure.
But yeah, so so basically no one came up that night. So it was me, I did my poem, and then I spent 2 hours like kind of like waiting around, and then I was like, cool, and then like closed it up and was like, thanks everyone.
When no one went up at all?
No one went up.
Oh man.
Apart from, no, one person went up, this absolute legend named Gareth.
Gareth, what a G.
Yeah, he came up and did some beautiful Irish folk singing. He didn't know anything about it, and we just like came up and did this like amazing bit, and then went down and was like, "Yeah, cheers, thanks for having me." And I was like, "Yeah, of course."
Did you know him, or was it just
no?
random?
I'd never met him before. He
Damn.
just like happened to be at the pub.
So this one guy then just went up, did his little thing,
Yeah.
and otherwise it was just like your friend's family just watching nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. Just there, and they're like, "No, we'll just have some beers and then like
Yeah.
go home." I was like, "Yep, thanks for coming out."
Mental.
Yeah, it was rough, but eventually it like turned into something very wholesome and cute.
Yeah.
The other thing, I was like, okay, I want to focus on doing something theatre based because that's like the direction I want to head in. Professionally speaking. And then I was like, okay, what would this be? And I was trying to conceptualize it, and it was my birthday. It was December.
Yeah, how old are you, by the way?
I'm 21.
You're 21. Cool.
Yeah, and so it was my birthday party, and I was chatting to my mate Jake, who had met at an audition. He's a brilliant deviser and theatre maker in general. And we were talking about like how to do theatre in a pub, because it's such a challenge because you don't have people that are there to watch something. They're just there to have a chat.
Yeah. Have a chat, have a drink, you know.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily want like to be listening to something, or maybe they want something in the background, but like they don't want to have to focus on something. And so we were like, okay, like he pointed out, like you definitely have to have something that's like musical based, and I was like, yeah, but like how would we do that? Like the only thing that I could think of was like if we did something improv, like if we did like an improv show in which you have like some performers that come up every week and they take like prompts from the crowd, because that's quite fun, right?
Yeah.
People can be like, "Oh, you guys are astronauts, and you're at the sea, you're at the beach, and one of you stubbed your toe," and you're like, "Okay, yeah, you go from there."
And they're always really funny. Like these improv things that I see online, they get recorded.
They're also really awkward, which makes them so much extra.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like funnier, right?
And if the actors play into that awkwardness as well.
Yeah. And so we were like, okay, so it would probably have to be something that's musical based and involves quite a bit of improv. And then we kept on having these conversations about what it would be. And then I think it was a second or third meeting that second or third time that we met up and we were talking about it. And they'd just come from this birthday party. Our friend named Hallie, who's an incredibly talented musician. And they'd met a bunch of amazing people, and were like, "Oh, you really need to meet these people. I think they'd be amazing for this project." And then I met them all, and I was like, "Holy crap, these people are amazing." And then we started talking about what it would be, and one of them was like a drag king or drag queen. And they play this character like Ernest the drag queen. Ernest the drag king. And then it was Noah Clark, who also does plays this character Bunny Fizness.
So you met with these people, and then that was kind of like the initial group.
Yeah. And then Jake had a few other friends because he's Bristolian, and I was like, cool,
Bristolian. That makes it sound so just like exciting.
What do you? I mean, I'm like,
I don't know. It's like when you say someone's like, well, for example, you're South African.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, South African, and say someone's Bristolian. I don't know. It just.
It's a fancy way of saying.
It's a very fancy. Yeah, it's very. But it makes it sound cool, doesn't it?
Yeah, but he's from Bristol, right?
He's from
so
Bristol.
I was like, cool.
We love Bristol.
Like he's also been in the theatre. He's grown up working in the Bristol Old Vic, doing
Nice.
different programs with them and all that kind of
So he's
stuff.
very experienced.
Yeah. And knew a few theatre people and was like, yeah, these people would also be amazing. And I was like,
Nice.
phenomenal. And so with this eclectic group of people, I was like, we were talking about what it would be and what we could turn it into. And we were like, yeah, this is basically like a carnival, because it's not just improv performers, or it's not just musicians. It's like you've got people doing drag, and then you've got it's like a queer event too, and then I suppose they go hand in hand. and then you've got musicians, and
Yep.
you've got like improv, and it's just a big celebration.
Yeah.
And so we started having these jam sessions, and they were so much fun.
Were these jam sessions in the pub, or were these just with you by yourself? Just
These were just at one another's houses, and
yeah,
just like
a practice, kind of seeing what you'd come up with.
yeah, kind of. And we were still very focused that it was probably going to be mainly music. It didn't end up being mainly music, but like it was still like it was just fun to all get together, and we were all like, just like building these different like sound stages, and this person Harry that I'm talking about, she's super talented with like synths and
So lots of different skill sets kind of had come together.
yeah, but she's really talented with like synths and like DJing and like mixing like a lot of electronic music, but
Yeah.
also has like hundreds of instruments, which, as you can imagine, when you get a group of creatives in the same room,
Oh yeah,
and they're all just like hanging out,
love instruments.
yeah, just like playing around on different percussion stuff, and we were just making all these like weird and wonderful different sound stages, and yeah, so it was eventually like we got a hard date on when it would start, and we were like, okay, 16th of May. Right now we need to actually make something,
Yeah,
as
do
opposed to
something.
just like getting to know one another and getting really comfortable working with one another.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, what would be really fun? What would we want if we went to the pub and we were like, this is amazing, what have I found myself in? And basically it was kind of like, what happens if we walked into like a role-playing game?
And this idea came from your jams. You were just chilling.
Yeah, we would just like, it would be yeah, I think that's where it stemmed from, is like if people came in and it was like a like silly place where everyone could just like where people could just play.
Yeah, and have fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's not enough of that around, and
Yeah.
and we were like, yeah, let's just make a place where people can just be silly and play and hang out. And so we started building this world. And so we came up with this currency called Niblets.
Such a great name.
And then that's like what people were like incentivized to try and get, and to like incentivize people to like interact with people and do like quests, because
Yeah.
we had different characters, and we were like, okay, so we based it on, I did a lot of history, like research on the history of the Volunteer Tavern, and was like, where like what can we, like we wanted to make the history play a factor in, because like that's where people are viewing it.
Yeah.
And so we made it based on what the Volunteer Tavern used to be, and like how it started being a tavern. And it used to be outside the walls of Brigstow, when Brigstow was like a walled city.
Brigstow.
Yeah, Bristol.
Oh, makes sense.
But it turned into Bristol. And so we were like, okay, cool. Like let's develop this. And so we made this like everyone's like very queer and very like fantastical, and we were like, amazing. Let's make a medieval fantasy.
It does feel very like Skyrim. Am I right in saying
Yeah.
that? Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And like you go into or any kind of video game or
Thinking Dungeons and Dragons.
like universe, yeah,
So that's how we initially thought we'd start it.
as a D&D type.
Yeah, we were going to make a we were going to do a D&D campaign. Our friend Jamie like does like Dungeon Master, and we were like, okay,
Nice.
cool. Or is a Dungeon Master. And we were like, cool. Like if you build the world and we can all play in it as characters, and then we can like tell the tales of the adventures we get up to as like the performance. We're like, that would
Yeah.
be such a fun way of
Yeah.
like devising. We ended up being like a party of 10, and we were like, okay, we can't really do like an effective campaign like this in terms of Dungeons and Dragons, but amazing to have world builders involved in the project, because you've got people
Yeah.
like coming up with like it's like sitting in the way lines of like the taverns like placed, and we're like, okay, cool, so this is so we said, okay, the tavern's placed like in this mystical forest outside the
Nice.
walls of Brigstow, and the whole concept, we wanted to keep it having a message, and we were like, let's involve politics in this because we care a lot about. And we were like, so the main baddies. We were like, what's the conflict going to be? And so it became the conservatorium.
The conservatorium. That's
yeah.
brilliant. I love that.
Who's headed by, well, not headed by, but who's the face of the conservatorium is Baldwin's, who's played by this very, very talented theatre maker, Imogen Downs, who has become an absolute fan favourite in terms of like just being this little man who walks around with like this like grey wig.
Yes.
And he's like really, really thick glasses and is like.
And that's like the big big baddie, kind of the.
Yeah, and he's
helps drive the story.
Exactly, yeah. And so like that was kind of how the premise started, and then we started developing it further and further, and we were like, okay, cool, like, a lot of the, so I think, who was it? I think it was, a few of the performers worked for Boomtown and did like, among other festivals, they did Boomtown. I don't know if you.
I've not heard of Boomtown. No.
Boomtown's like an immersive theatre festival.
Immersive theatre is becoming big.
Yeah, but like I went to the festival this year because we'd heard basically like this is like so much throughout the first season. Like this is like a mini Boomtown, and we were like, well, they all knew what Boomtown was, but
sure.
Jake and I weren't sure, and we were like, it's crazy because like for the first initial conversations, it was just us talking, and we were like, this will be amazing. We should definitely do this. Yeah. And everyone was like, yeah, this is like a mini Boomtown. And we were like, Matt, well, that's crazy because we've never actually been to Boomtown, and so we both went this year, and it was
nice.
It was phenomenal.
So tell me about Boomtown. How does it work?
So Boomtown's basically, it's basically a festival centered around this like massive staged town, in which each of the districts of the town centers around like a stage. Okay. And so it's an electronic festival.
Lots of different stages.
Yeah, lots of different stages within one like town
right.
set up. Well, but it's like it's all like they all construct the town, and then each of the districts is like centered around an arena for like a different style of music, and so and I think they employ like 100+ like actors who. They have like a whole story that follows throughout, like they've been running it for 15 years, and there's like I think it goes between 55 and 75,000 people. It's I can't remember where it's based. I think it's somewhere down south, like far south. Yeah,
immersive theatre I've noticed is really starting to, especially for the last couple of years. I'm seeing it everywhere now, and I think people are enjoying it a lot more.
So much fun.
Why do you think people? I mean, I know it's been going for a while, but why do you think more recently people have started to like come to immersive theatre maybe more than they would want, say, to go to normal theatre? Do you have any idea of what a reason? I've got like, I think potentially an answer.
I think well, like people want to get involved more, and I think people like it's more stimulating when you can actually interact with characters and people and stuff. And it's how like through Carnifolk stuff, it's how I figured out that like it's my favorite way of performing and doing shows and stuff, because like it's like I play Marvin the Mushroom Man, who's this Australian mushroom with this huge like mushroom hat and has these like dangling like spore sprites.
Oh, nice!
And they all fly around my head and whisper funny things in my ears. And so like playing that character, we all devised like what our characters were first, and then like made the story around that. And so when you're like interacting with people, it's like you're so sure of your character that when you're talking to people, like you can say in character and they can have so much fun because they get to play with you, as opposed to just they're watching you do something. Yeah, it's like no, they get to have fun with you and be like, oh, let's go and do this, and you're like, oh yeah, let's, and then you guys all go off and do something, and it's like it's so much more of a like interactive and stimulating way to like not just consume something, but to like interact and play with it.
I would say it's a really great escape, like
for sure,
because I think there's so much now just going on in the world, so much, which is, I want to call it quite overwhelming, especially for like as a young person, like
Yeah.
with loads of things that is going on. And so me and Kaitlin, who's doing some of our camera work today, we went to watch a Punch Drunk performance. Have you heard of Punch Drunk?
I have. I've
Yeah.
never been to one, but I've been told.
Oh, but we did an episode about it.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It was called The Burnt City, what we went to watch, and I'd never done immersive theatre in that way before. And it was in like massive like warehouses, and they'd created loads of like all the different set, and it was just the most interesting thing I've ever watched. And I would just want to continue being involved as an audience member and potentially an actor one day, and or a creative in immersive theatre. I love it. Watching that has given me a similar viewpoint to what you have about like how much why and liking immersive theatre in that way.
Well, I mean, we're starting Carnifolk London.
Which I was just about to say, I would love to come to one of your Carnifolk events.
Please do. I mean, but also the thing is with Carnifolk is we've kept it. One thing that we were very set on is keeping it completely open so that anyone can cook. In which it's like, if anyone wants to join Carnifolk, they can literally just like talk to one of us and be like, how do I get involved? Like, we have a lot of people that like they come every single chapter, but they distinctly don't want to get involved in the production side of it because it might kill it for them. And they love the fact that it's just this world that they get to play in, that they don't have to like think up what's going to happen. They just go in and they have their own character that they've got in their head, and they're like, yeah, no, I'm this character. I don't know. I'm insert. And they play that character every single time, and they get to play this role-playing game with all these people that are living in the same world as them, and they don't want to be involved in the production. But we also keep the production completely open, so anyone who wants to get involved can get involved and can come and play with us and build it with us.
Because I don't think there's much out there that's like that. And I think for young actors who are at drama school, being able to once a week, just for fun of it, you know, just go, join this group of people, create a character, be involved in this storyline, and just like actually practice the skills that you're being taught. And I can see you expanding in the future so much more. I mean, you've gone from Bristol to now London and Manchester.
Yeah, so
I'm interested in how that works.
We haven't like done any shows yet in London and Manchester. We're still like very much in the early stages of like getting the crews together and like getting venues and stuff like that. But yeah, we've definitely I don't think any of us expected how much it would like grow. But like it's one of those things that we wanted to keep it open and we wanted to keep it communal, but we never realized how much of a yearning there is for community within the UK. And like it worked particularly well in Bristol because we're all just like crusty Bristol hippies. And like all the people that come are like, oh, this is amazing, and you're like, yeah man, just like come and get stuck in, and then everyone does. And also I think Bristol's just very queer, and so everyone just like loves being in like this space in which they can all be silly and but yeah, I think it's gonna be a challenge to get going, but at the same time it feels like everyone's always looking for community. Yeah,
and I can see it having a future. Like thinking now of the next, like after graduation or whatever, it would be great for young people, if in like every major part of London, I mean not necessarily Carnifolk, but if you like the OGs, but if there were just events that people could rock up to and just create these characters, and you've come up with an amazing idea. It's really good, and I'm interested in now how then you've told me about it being developed from one of your houses, but I'm interested to know like when you first did it, when you first put on an evening, how that went, because it would have been this brand new thing. People would have been a little bit like unsure.
So we like off the bat, because it was a group of 10 of us at the beginning, we knew that the turnout was gonna be good, because like, so what I found even from doing the open mic, which didn't start off too hot, but one thing that was for sure is that for your first event, like your family and friends are always gonna they're always gonna be wanting to come up and like see what you're doing, but it's keeping it consistent after that. It's like you're gonna get that surge of like people want to come support you, but then it's like I want to come support you, but I also can't come and support you every single show, especially because we are running it every 2 weeks. In which it's like the turnaround time to like pump out like a whole new show, which is like 3 hours long every 2 weeks.
Yeah,
it's really intense. But yeah, so the first one had a big turnout because it's like 10 people and all their friends come to watch it.
Yes, that makes sense.
But we were like, okay, what about the second one? And like it also went well, but like the crowd was very different. The crowd was a lot of the people that were there in the first one that weren't there for Carnifolk came back to come see what Carnifolk was, and a lot of the friends, well, quite a few of the friends came back, but like it was more new people. And so the turnaround time for it to be like just our mates versus it being people that were like, I love this.
Yeah, people who are actually interested.
That just want to come to it because because of what it is, was so quick and rapid, and we didn't expect it. We were like, okay, like I remember having the conversation with Jake on the first one, and we're like, what if like just no one comes? Like, what if we just like all walk out there in our wild medieval costumes, and like I played Marvin the Mushroom Man. He plays Spud the Potato, who's wearing this potato sack and like a muddy like what's it called? Like I guess like a pauper's cap or like a novice cap, like just like a beanie that kind of like continues on and just like one of those like medieval.
I know what you mean.
And then like and sandals, and we were like, this is like. And it is a strange switch in which it's like normal pub, and then suddenly like all these characters.
Yeah,
like,
normal pub, and then it's just this world universe. Just
and you've got people coming dressed out as trees and frogs, and like, and it's like, where are we? But like, it was also one of those things that we noticed that like, that people loved it. That like, it was like a very quick transition in which it's like, holy crap! Like some people would be like, yeah, like this isn't for me, and then it's like, yeah, no worries, like give them a chance. Like we gave them like everyone like 15 minutes roughly, in which it's like, hi, we're doing like a carnival, and then like you give people 15 minutes, and you actually start like performing and stuff more, just so people have some chances. Like if they don't want to be there, they can be like, let's skedaddle, like before like we start having like random clowns coming and speaking to us and stuff. But yeah, so we didn't expect how rapidly it would grow and how much people would love it. But we also figured like what's the worst that could happen is that there's 10 of us all just messing about in a pub. In which is like there's enough of us that we fill the space anyway. But you want people to interact and enjoy it.
Yeah, of course.
And it's gone really well, and we've so obviously we're doing London and Manchester, and we're also doing festival season, like Boomtown. Boomtown was something that we had talked about, in which it's like we were already like doing something that people are like, yeah, this is like a mini Boomtown, this is like so much fun, and which we're like, which people were like, yeah, we perform in Boomtown too. And then like Jake and I were like, we've never been to Boomtown. Jake performed in the most recent one, having never been to Boomtown. Wow. And I was working there doing like stewarding and stuff. And I was like, this is amazing. Like we would fit right in here.
Yeah.
And so we have conversations with Boomtown, along with like a few other different festivals that are like quite sizable, that we're trying to get into for next year, in which it's like we were trying to have like a Carnifolk tent, or like
that would be so cool.
In Boomtown, we're trying to have like an area of the district in which it's like you're in like a Carney Towns building, or like Carney Street or something like that, in which it would be so much fun to be like, welcome, you've like walked into, because we want to, it's all about world building, right? So you want to feel immersed when you walk in, and it's like, if we could have like our own tent in which like someone would be like at a festival anyway, and they're like, oh, I wonder what this is, and they walk into a tent, and it's like you've just been transported into a medieval magic world, and so you've got like
do you think that's going to happen?
I mean, hopefully we've got meetings with a lot of the organizers coming like November, December to book for next year. That's in which we've had like we had the which we've had some people like come through to Boomtown, come through to Carnifolks, and be like, this is amazing. Like, we want this at our festival, and we're like,
Yeah.
we'd
Yeah.
love to be at your
Yeah.
festival. That would be amazing.
I think doing festivals would be such a great way just to like expand and grow it,
For
and then
sure.
also like raise awareness of what you're doing. Because if you have random people walking into your tent, they stay interested. They get involved in your different locations that you open up at.
Expanding's been an interesting challenge in the fact that, like, we've always been very focused on trying to keep the motivation away from it being something that's financially based.
Yeah, I want to touch on motivation as well in a
Yeah.
bit.
We've always kept it that the focus is on like having like sending a message and having like community, and just like making sure that the focus is on like spreading love and moving it away from like a capitalist idea of like we need to be doing this to grind, and like you enter, like we've never had like you pay at the door.
Yeah, it's just free entry.
Yeah, free entry. We have pay what you feel tickets, in which it's like, if you want to support us, you can come, like you can buy a ticket and pay something for it. But at the same time, like it's not important. It just helps us out in terms of like, it helps us, it not cost us. In which we had the privilege, I think 3 chapters in which we're making like 50, 60 quid a night, in which it's like, we can, and it's like, hey, for 10 people, it's like, if we, or like 10, 12 people, it's like, if we split it, it would be like £5-6 for like a night plus all the prep rehearsal times. But at the same time, it will pay for things like we can buy ribbons and little bits for costume, and if we need to buy things that we only need for Carnifolk, it's like we can buy those and it doesn't cost us anything. Like it doesn't cost the performers, because they're already like giving their time and energy, like so much energy, in which it's like focusing on just like bringing all the love and ideas and silliness and fun. And they're just an amazing family.
I would like to kind of talk more about the motivation in a second, as well as how you're talking in terms of like the financial side and like how that can affect motivation and affect viewing it. I think before we get there, just a little bit more just about your world that you create, and like you've told me kind of about these characters that you've built and that they come in and interact with the audience. In terms of the performance itself, so you come in, and is it scripted? Is it improvised? How do you block it? How do you plan what you do? And then also like, what is it exactly that you do? Like what are your stories? What are your themes?
It's a little so we keep it very open-ended, and we do lots of stuff by the seat of our pants. But the thing is also, right, because it's such a silly open event, it's also not one of those things that like I imagine with Punch Drunk, because it's like a very professional setup that like you go and like the actors probably have like they have like a very, very tight story, and like
it gets repeated when we watched
they have to make sure that they can repeat it like really consistently. With Carnifolk, it's like people are there, and like if something goes wrong, we're like, oh, sorry guys, and everyone's like, yeah, nah, it's chilled. Like people are very like chilled about it, because we don't take it very seriously. Because the whole thing's like we're spreading a message, and we're having lots of fun with it, and it's silly, but it's also like,
well, it's like it's serious but not serious.
Yeah, it's about we cover serious topics, but we also, the focus is on also letting people play and have fun, and we don't. And we always want people to leave being like, oh man, that was so wholesome, because because we always do. We always leave and we're always like, oh, that was so good. We frame the evenings. So we decide, like, the first few we were like, okay, cool, how do we introduce the characters? This is something that Jake's a lot better at than I am, in which it's like he's very good at devising and like coming up with like concepts and like of like which route to go down and stuff, but also like everyone's so amazing and like creative about it that like it never seems to be an issue that we're all lacking like a direction to go towards. So we frame what the night's going to be like. Like, okay, it's cool, so like we're going to have it that it's a birthday party, and then it's like, okay, what if it's a birthday party and then it becomes like a murder mystery?
Nice.
And we're like, okay, cool. So like it's a birthday party that's like a murder mystery, but we don't want to include murder because we want it to keep it really light, and also like because it's a very fantastical, queer, medieval kind of night. You also have to understand, and you're in Bristol. You also have to understand that some of the audience coming are going to be on psychedelics and like trying to create a story which is trip friendly. Can be quite tricky.
That's such a funny thing to have to consider.
But I mean, like it's always been one of those things that we're like, we want it to be trip friendly because it's like, if you're creating this like wild and psychedelic and silly thing, like you want people to feel like, because the thing is also when it comes to tripping, right? Like when you have a bad trip, it's because you feel uncomfortable. And so it's like, we want it to be as comfortable a place that if someone decided to take psychedelics, they could be sat there and be like, man, I feel so comfy and happy right now. I feel so safe. I'm in such a safe space that while I'm sitting in this pub, I'm also like feeling completely safe, as opposed to like, most people wouldn't dream like if they were going to take psychedelics of doing psychedelics in a pub, but we want it to be friendly enough and approachable enough that people could do that. And I feel like we were ready to, there was a couple of times that someone didn't have a great time because of it, but like apart from that, it's like we were very like focused on like, we want to make sure that we don't have energies or vibes that get too negative, that even if we're like talking about like a unpleasant topic, that it's in a way that it still feels like, okay, man, that sucks, like, or like, oh yeah, that's right, we need to change that, as opposed to like it being like, man, it sucks in this pub right now. But yeah, so we structured it around making sure that each evening we have like roughly the story we're going to go down. And then what characters are going to be doing what roughly. And then we also have like quests in which it's like people come up with their quests and they're like, so I'm going to be playing these games with the audience. And then we're also going to be like, I need someone to help me. I've lost my eggs. And it's like, okay, like people have to go and find the eggs in exchange for niblets.
Where do you take influence from to create these ideas?
People are just mad creative, honestly. I think it's all about like, I think as people develop their characters, they find out what works best. So my character was Marvin the Mushroom Man, who's a journalist. I can't remember who thought of that, but I think it might have been Noah or someone, but someone thought because I wanted to add depth. I was like, I don't want it to be just like Marvin the Mushroom Man's like he's just like always trippy and on shrooms, and he always like seems like he's stoned. I was like, I want it to be like there's also like some depth to the character, so that it doesn't also just get boring for me, because it's like I'm gonna have to do this like every 2 weeks. Like I'm gonna be this character for 3 hours.
You want to enjoy it.
Of course. And so Marvin became a journalist, in which he has a newspaper, which I think one of the people that works at Boomtown, one who acts for Boomtown, came up with, and in which it was probably a Boomtown thing first, and then without us knowing it became a thing that was Carnifolk. So we had the Mycelium, which is our newspaper, which we write a new newspaper every 2 weeks that comes out. Cool. And that's what we use for like giving people an introduction and a framework for the night. Yeah. So if you're sat down, and I'll approach you as Marvin and like come give you a newspaper.
And it like gives them a little bit of context of what's happening.
It'll give the front page is like usually explains like what happened in the previous chapter in like a way that's like news, in which it's like this just happened. Yeah. Then you open the page and then it gives you like, it talks about like niblet crackdown because the conservatorium are using conserva coins and they don't want you using an unregulated currency.
It is brilliant. Like it's really brilliant. It's all these ideas fun. And like the way that they've all kind of perfectly linked together, like the niblets and the fact you've got a currency is cool. How can they be used?
So we have a shop too. At first we had a bar, which is a tricky one to navigate when you are functioning within a pub that needs to make profit. But we had our dungeon master Jamie, he was the barkeep, in which people could go and gamble their niblets with him.
Okay, nice. Feeding into the addiction.
But like it's exchange for niblets. But if you get 3 niblets and you pay the 3 niblets, you can get a shot of Twaka. in which people are like incentivized, and also like, hey, it loosens
good.
up the night. Everyone's like gets a little bit more drunk because they're like they're exchanging like they're exchanging their currency for
It's
booze,
smart.
and they're like
It's very
amazing.
smart.
And then it became more like, and then it became a shop in which we had like different shopkeeps. We had like Knick-Knack the shopkeeper, who would have different like knickknacks that you could buy for him for for different like amounts of niblets. And then my flatmate Rose, who had come to all of them, became a Theldria, who makes these beautiful little like felt flowers. And then you could go and buy felt flowers for your niblets, and you could have things to take home. And so you'd have they've gotten like extraordinarily like complicated, and which is like whole like orchids made of like felt and like wire. And yeah, so she's making all of these, and that's like kind of what the shop's turned into. You could still buy the Twacker shots, and you could still buy other different like random bits and bobs, but like with a focus on that, because that's what she'd spend her time making in between. And yeah, so people would like exchange their niblets for that, but they could also pay niblets to one another and stuff. So it just gave like a decentralized currency that people could use.
I think it's really good because it adds so much more option to what you could do with the night. It like the story alone, which is it improvised partly?
So yeah, we've got the framework for it, but then we also have like but there's nothing scripted, obviously, because also with immersive theatre you have to be able to interact. So it's like cool. We'll start here at 8 p.m. We're gonna need it to be at this point in the story, in which like, let's do. Okay, so
there is a framework.
Yes, it's a framework, but then you improv within that framework to get to the same end goal. Cool. But you also have silly stuff in it, in which it's like, cool. Like it doesn't matter what the name of this is. So the audience decide. It doesn't matter what for the end of season we were like, okay, we need a fantastical beast that we're gonna pretend that we've discovered, and that's why they can't shut the conservatorium can't shut the pub down. And so we were like, okay, guys, we need to come up with this fantastical beast. And so the audience came up with Cum Horse. Which is a two-legged horse, one leg on the front, one leg on the back, and only makes a screeching noise.
How has your audience? That's a Bristolians.
Phenomenal.
Mental.
Yeah. And so we were like, okay, well, we're gonna need to find this horse. And so for the turnaround, Chris and Zane, who are these like phenomenal people. Zane does like I think. Rocky something drag, I can't remember the name, but yeah, they do a really cool drag act too. They went home and they made Cum Horse for the next chapter. That way we can go, when the conservatorium arrived, we could be like, nay, we have Cum Horse. And then Cum Horse would trot out, and it was like 3 people under this like MacGyvered horse that was like to the audience's description, because the audience had explained exactly what Cum Horse looked like, what it sounded like. And so they came out in Cum Horse, and then and then we were like, see, this is Cum Horse. And then the conservatorium were like, shucks, and then I had to dip on out.
So who play the conservatorium? Is that part of some of your friends?
Yeah.
Play them.
So
okay.
Yeah, so it was Baldwin's up until the end of the season, in which Baldwin became one of the members of the Carnifolk, because deep down he really just wanted community and wasn't accepted by the conservatorium.
That's quite wholesome. That's quite sweet.
We like to keep arcs, in which is like
good.
everyone's got depth, and there's people are approachable. To try and keep some nuance to it. It's not just like baddie no. Yeah. It's like yeah, well, why does baddie feel this way? We try and keep that. And we've definitely, like, everyone, the Carnifolk Bristol gang have definitely like introduced more nuance and more questions and depth in the second season, in which once we got the framework of how to run the shows, it's like so like niblets, for example, like we came up with niblets, but like we also, like, none of us really support capitalism, especially in the late stage capitalism which we're in which it's like, cool, like, so we've got this off-grid currency that we've created. Now, how do we challenge that? Because what happens if...
That's such an interesting way of thinking of it, or approaching it, of how do we challenge that?
Yeah.
You create an idea and it's like, I like that a lot.
I think it's important to continue challenging your own work and challenging, because as you progress, you have to always think back on like, okay, when we made it, we wanted something to incentivize people, but this is how capitalism works, in which it's like, cool, now everyone's incentivized by this currency and everyone's like trying to hustle. And then like, it was wild. We had like people coming up with like, they had like niblet pyramid schemes, in which like, you know, people going around being like, yeah, invest 2 niblets, get back 3 niblets, and they were like running it, and like it was working.
That's quite funny.
It was amazing.
That's
like,
great.
Don't get me wrong, I
love that.
Yeah, it was just it was spot on. But it was like, we were like, okay, now that we've seen this, we've realized like what niblets have become. They've become like an actual currency. Like they're a hot commodity. People bring back their niblets and they want to expend them, and we also have to worry about what was dubbed nibflation.
Nibflation.
Because you've got to worry about your currency. Like, you've got to keep on creating more currency, because if people take them home and don't come back in the next chapter, then you start running out of currency.
I see.
But if you spray paint more 1p pennies, which we don't do because that would be defacing currency. But if you happen to have blue coins that were one-sided, happened to be a British penny, and the other side was blue, then you've got to create more, so the shop doesn't run out of them. And so we were like, okay, so this is, how do we challenge that? And it's like, well, why don't we talk about nibflation?
Yes.
And then like, and then we take it off the market, which is like, okay, we can't use niblets anymore. We have to create something new.
That's such a funny like thing, just to sit down and be like, okay, so how do we challenge nibflation?
Yeah.
How do we fix this?
I mean,
like,
all of Carnifolk's like that. As we all sit down, and we're like, this is so ridiculous, but if we're being serious about how we live in our world, we have to question why this is a thing, and we have to question like why this thing that we've made has become problematic. How do we like address that, and then like make it feel comfortable and make it be like, okay.
So how did you address nibflation?
I don't know. I wasn't there for season 2. But
I'm interested to know.
I think they've decentralized it and like returned values down on like niblets and stuff.
Okay.
We're working on it. It's a process. And
that's the thing. Like, it's always evolving. And I think if you're like going to be a creative, making sure that you don't get stuck in the same way of just doing the same thing over is always kind of growing. And I'm so excited for it to come to London, because it's something I will definitely be attending, because it just, like, as a theatre kid and as a drama student, like, it is perfect. You just get to... Hello.
Josh goes speed dating Carnifolk edition.
Potentially.
That would be amazing.
Josh goes speed dating with the characters in Carnifolk.
Yeah. So for context, my producer over here has created this great idea of going to the different drama schools and doing some like a podcast speed dating type thing, where I have like 5 minutes with different students, and it's just like a little, not necessarily a date, but just more of like a about them and their course and why they're interesting. And
considering that your producer's also your girlfriend,
that
would be a little
who will also be filming it as well. How awkward would that be? But it is a good idea that you have come up with, so like I can't take any credit for that. And so potentially doing a Carnifolk edition. Imagine, so podcast in Carnifolk.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, okay, I'm just spurting here, but it's like, it's in the Carnifolk world, and you said anyone can join. So let's say potentially I join and I want to create a character, and my character's a podcaster, and I'm recording in the corner, I'm podcasting with the Carnifolk going on behind me, and then I just get like the characters just kind of come up and then just talk for like 10 minutes before kind of going back to their thing, and that's an actual episode, and I actually post it on YouTube.
Imagine the Mushroom Man trying to figure out what a microphone is.
And doing it in character as well would be amazing.
The most fun, like having photographers coming around, and it's like, and they're like, oh, I can take a picture, and you're like, what's a picture? And they're like, can I point my black box at you? And you're like, yeah, all right. What's inside it? And you're like going up to the lens, and you're like, I can't quite. Or people are like, what's the Instagram? You're like, what's an Instagram? And
I would love. Oh, man.
It's so much fun, especially when people like, because sometimes it takes people like a while to get it, and they're like, what do you mean? And you're like, I don't know what a sale you phone is.
Sell you phone.
and we're just like, okay. And then some people get it immediately and they're like, and they get really creative with it. And it's always so much fun to see how they spin it, to be like, in this mystical world, here's what my black mirror is. And you're like, whoa, is it like an enchanted, is it an enchanted doohickey? And they're like, yeah, it's a trinket. And you're like, that's amazing.
I would love doing a podcast then. Potentially we can get that.
We also carnify everything, so it would be a carnicast.
Carnicast.
And it would be like, yeah, so we just add carny to the beginning of a word, and it's like,
okay.
We need to discuss the carniculars, like just like random things like that, in which it just keeps things fun verbally.
I think that's nice because for an audience, like, it is fun, and because they're having fun, they're just gonna go back each week and keep having fun.
It's all about building a community.
Yeah,
and like
it sounds like you have, especially if you're expanding or thinking of expanding.
Like that's the hope, is that, and I look forward to doing it in London because I've just arrived here and I haven't experienced much community. Like I live in Tottenham, and Tottenham does have some community, but like I feel like there's a lot of space, and it's difficult to find in London because there's so much going on, and I feel like building communal spaces in which people can just come and play and get to know one another is like so important, because like it can be really lonely. Like when I arrived from South Africa, like I arrived here and I didn't have, like I was planning on doing a gap year and then going back to South Africa, but coming in January of 2020, it wasn't the best time to come to a gap year in the country. So yeah, I arrived and like I didn't have anything to, like, even in the first 2 months before COVID, like I was in a town just outside of Bristol, and there was nothing to really like bring me in contact with people, but like people that like were like-minded. Like I was working at a pub, but like in the town, like there was no young people. It was like once you get to like sixth form, there's not even a sixth form in the town, so people go to Bristol, which is like 45 minutes on the bus. And I was like, okay, so I'm not gonna meet anyone around me that like even people like in like their like late 20s, early 30s. And I was like, maybe someone that might like relate to me. It's like, sorry, I've got like a wife and kids I need to get back to. And it's like, oh yeah, fair. Like, okay, you come to the town's Cleveland, you come to Cleveland to settle. Like, and that's very much the vibe of it. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be really tricky to like make friends, but because there's no like a lot of, I was used to being in school, because I arrived at like 18, and I was used to being in school in which it's like you're with people like your same age and you're in classes in which you're interested in the same stuff and that kind of thing, and people get that in university. But like I arrived and that wasn't what I was going for. I was going to do a gap year, earn some money working in the UK, and then go back to pay for my studies in South Africa, because the exchange rate's so good that I was like, a year's working here pays for 4 years of my degree back there.
Wow.
Yeah, and then COVID happened, and I ended up sticking around and met my my amazing girlfriend Maya, and yeah, just kind of stuck around it. I love the infrastructure in the UK. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't love about the UK, but I was like, the infrastructure and the safety is actually plays a much bigger factor than you'd expect. But yeah, so I was like, yeah, I struggled to make friends because there wasn't anything bringing me around people that like had similar interests. And I was like, man, it's actually really isolating. Like the only people you interact with that like might be anywhere like close to like similar interests, similar age, anything like that, are people that you're like paying for like you're like go to the shop and like you speak to them and you're like, oh okay, and you're like, I'm buying something from you and you're giving me something that I'm gonna leave, and you're like, cool, and like that's about it. And it's like I just found it really lonely and isolating when I arrived here, because like in South Africa it's a lot more of a friendly culture. Like you go out and you chat to someone and then you're like, yeah, stick around, have a beer, and then like you get to know someone. But it doesn't really feel the case as much in the UK. And so I was like mad. And so when Carnifolk started to build, I was like, this is like community that I haven't felt in like quite some time. but it's also in a very unique way. But also like, I hadn't found community in the UK much at all before that. And so it felt.
So
quite
you kind of
unique.
made your own community.
Yeah, I think we all found one another. I very much believe like energy attracts, and I think there was so much love, and like I feel like we all kind of drew towards one another, and yeah, I feel like we kind of all became like an amazing family.
Yeah.
Because of it.
That's really, really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I whenever I go back to Bristol, it absolutely warms my heart to see everyone.
Yeah. Were you planning on coming to Central at all? Because you said about wanting to go back to South Africa.
Well, when I arrived in the UK, no, I wasn't planning on studying here. I was planning on working for a year and then going back.
Yeah.
But then, like, yeah, I stayed around for. I was like, I stayed and I was like, okay, yeah, I can study. There's like some of the best. I was planning on studying like performance or film, but probably performance in South Africa. And I was like, okay, well, I can. Like, I happen to be right next to. Like, my girlfriend was like, if you're staying, there's like the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School is like one of the best conservatoires in the country, and it's like 45 minutes from here. And I was like, okay, fair. And it was like one of the best in the whole world. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe. And then I looked around and I was like, there's actually amazing drama schools in the UK. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I want to study there. But I also realized that if I was going to stay here, in order to fund my studies, I'd need a student loan. And I couldn't get a student loan unless I was in the country for 3 academic years before it started. And so I was like, yeah, I'll wait it out.
So that's what you've done.
Yeah. And so I spent 3 years just like working, traveling and hanging out in Bristol.
Wow.
And then I was like, yeah, I kind of made a pivot in those 3 years in which I was like, I don't think I want to study to be a performer because that's never where my passions really lied. I've always wanted to like devise and direct and do that kind of thing. I never realized that I enjoyed or was good at producing, but I ended up producing like pretty much all of Carnifolk. Like that was the main thing that I was doing at Carnifolk. Like I found in terms of like creativity, I was like, I feel like I'm not that creative. Like everyone at Carnifolk was like, no, like you're good. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But like, I feel, but like the one thing that I know that I'm good at is I know that I'm good at producing. It stresses me out so much because I'm a very like I talk quite slowly. I live quite slowly. I'm like a very like mellow person. Yeah.
Tortoise.
Yeah, I suppose
nice.
so. But yeah, like I was like, yeah, like, but I'm like a little bit autistic, and that works very much to my benefit when it comes to being like, okay, organize everything, make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure everyone's comfy, like make sure everyone knows what's going on. And I found that was a big thing for Carnifolk, is that like, because there's so many creatives and everyone was so ADHD that it's like someone that can make sure that everyone's doing the bits that they want to be doing and being like, have you done that yet? And they're like, oh shit, no. And you're like, okay, cool. That needs to get done. We also need this done. Who wants to do that? And there's a million people that want to do it. It's like, cool. But then like everyone needs like just someone to produce basically.
Yeah.
And so I learned that I was quite good at that. And so I pivoted over to, I was like, I want to do like a broad spectrum drama degree. And so I can learn to do more of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I applied to do, I applied to 5 different, like, broad spectrum drama
For courses kind of similar to...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they'd all kind of titles would, like, differ slightly.
Yeah, they all slightly differ. The main 2 that I was trying to decide between, I got into Manchester Met's Drama and Contemporary Performance course, which is, like, a really, really good performance course. Not performance course, but, like, a really good broad spectrum course. I can't say broad spectrum.
What does that mean, broad spectrum?
You learn lots of different skills within drama and theatre. It's not just like
that makes sense.
You're doing a production course or you're doing a directing course. It's like you learn a bunch of different things, and then if you want to, you can specialize from there.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to put myself in a box from the get go and be like, I actually don't want to produce. It stresses me out, and now I've done 3 years of this, and like. My degree's not useful, so I was like, I want something that's a bit broader that I can, if I want to specialize, I can, but if not, it'll just teach me some good fundamentals.
And so then that's kind of how you've decided on Central.
Yeah.
on the
so
date course.
It was between
Yeah.
that one and the Manchester Met one. And I was weighing them up, and it was so stressful for like a month or two.
I'm sure, yeah.
But then, so it was the same course that my mate Jake had just finished in Manchester, and was like, "Yeah, it's amazing. You'll love it." And I was like, "Yeah." And it was like, "I'm also moving up there, so please, like, come with me." And I was like, "Oh my god, like, I could," and then I could also. But then I ended up picking London because I figured studying in London is a really good opportunity to move to London, and London's a very inaccessible city to move into, especially if you're not studying.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Like-
prices of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't.
And networking, right?
And networking. Oh my days.
Yeah.
Since moving here, the networking has been incredible. I do want to kind of, in a second, we'll kind of move into more of the, like, producery side, I guess. Because I want to talk about... Hello.
You've not said what course you're on at Central.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's a good point. We should get to that. We should do that now.
Drama, applied theatre, and education,
Yep.
which happens to be exactly the type of stuff I want to go into.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't aware of when I was putting. I was like, yeah, it's a good broad drama degree. And then, as I did Carnifolk stuff in the interim, which is like after I got my applications in, started doing Carnifolk stuff because we only started on the 16th of May this year. And then it was lots of community work, lots of facilitating, because most of Carnifolk are people that don't have any theatre background or anything like that. They do like performance maybe, or they do like drag work or clowning, but they don't do lots of theatre stuff. You were saying like amazing for theatre students to come into it. It's like, yeah, we had a few theatre students, but like most of it was just people they just came and enjoyed it.
People who are interested, I guess.
Yeah, people who are just interested. And so that's a lot of it's facilitating, is people that don't have the skills of doing stage work and stuff, and like helping everyone get towards a performance. And I was like, having done Carnifolk, I was like, yeah, I really want to get better at that kind of thing, because like I found that Jake was really good at it, but I didn't have as many tools in my toolbox for that kind of thing. And the date course was also so much about like applied theatre and like community work and facilitating and using it to also educate. And I was like, that sounds...
It's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah,
It's like,
you've gone into it with that experience.
Tools. And I figured like going into a course that you have experience in is a really good way of being like, cool. Like when I find when I'm studying stuff, I'm like, man, that's a really interesting technique. I've always done it this way, but this feels better. Or or what I've done already
I like that.
feels like it works better than what I'm learning here. And I'm like, okay, but like it works everyone works differently. And it's like, but having some like pre-learned fundamentals of it, I'm like, it feels like I've got a good foundation for it, which I'm like, yeah, like this really works for me. And that's what I've been loving the degree. Like the theory of it, I didn't think I'd find interesting because, well, just in general, like the idea of theory, like most drama students are like, oh, theory, like I really enjoy practice.
Yeah, which is why we're thinking about rebranding, because we've got theory in the name of this podcast, and I'm pretty sure that must put people off.
Yeah,
as a
maybe.
bad decision on my half. Anyway, let's go back.
But yeah, so I was like, oh, I'm really concerned that like, and when I was speaking to a lot of the like students that were in second year and third year, they were like, yeah, like the amount of theory you do at the beginning of first year is going to be quite like intimidating. And I was like, yeah, like fair play. That's kind of scary. It's also never been my strong suit. Like I've been very much like a practical person, like learning through doing, all that kind of stuff. And then I started doing it and I was like, this is fascinating. Like this is really, really engaging. And I do the course with Kaitlin, and Caitlin's nodding her head like,
is it that's the exact same thing that she says? Yeah, you know, whenever she's talking about the course.
Yeah, we've been learning about like national identity and a sense of belonging, and like working with displaced people, and like working with different neurodiverse groups, and like making sure that everyone feels comfortable within spaces, and like working, like doing community work, and facilitating for people with different needs, like whether or not like if you're working like a care home, or you're working in a hospital, or even if you're working in like a community center or like a prison or something like that. And it's like that's one of the things that I found, that's one of the ways I found out about Central. Sorry to plug a different podcast, but the Young Vic podcast.
That's absolutely okay.
They probably don't have many mutual listeners. But yeah, it was one of the date students who just finished the date course, was talking about studying at Central, doing the course, and like was talking about like how beneficial it was. And I'd seen a production that he'd done that was playing at Bristol or Vic.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to this podcast, I was like, well, that's theatre-based podcasts. And like I saw him talking about it, and I was like, man, I actually just went and watched that. And so I clicked on it and listened to it, and I was like, this is fascinating. He was talking all about the course, and I was like, that sounds exactly like what I want to do. And that's kind of like what drew me to the course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great
so
that a
good.
podcast is what did that. Because
Yeah.
it makes me just hope that through these things that we create, we could potentially have the same effect on other young people.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's so helpful, especially when you're listening to people and practitioners like talk about what got them there, but then also like kind of what like even people that are like very early in their career, like myself.
Yes.
I've done some stuff, but like nothing near like what most people have.
But you're still very young.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, no, I'm
21,
very aware
I
of
mean,
that. I'm not being
yeah,
hard on
yeah,
myself.
yeah.
I just mean like in terms of like usually when you listen to a podcast guest, like they've got like so much experience they can like go all the way back on. But it's like listening to those people like talk about like where I studied and what I studied and like how that kind of helped me develop, and like that kind of thing was so helpful. In which it's like mad, like having appreciated your work, I can also see what you're like attributing to your skills and like the fundamentals that have got you to a place that you can make work like this. And that can play so much of like with all these drama schools, like a big thing is like they all like promote like, here's the most famous person who went to our drama school.
Yeah.
Like welcome to the Dench Hall. And welcome to, and we've had this person, or we've had Benedict Cumberbatch here, and it's like all this kind of stuff, in which it's like, that's a huge draw. Like that's what I'd say, like along with like university rankings, which I don't know how much
I don't pay much attention to them.
Yeah,
but I know that they're there.
That plays a huge factor for a lot of people. And between that and who was at their drama school before them, lets them know like, oh yeah, this is what I'll be if I study here, which isn't necessarily true. But it helps a lot to like listen to someone speak in depth about it. And through things like podcasts, it's like it's one of the only unique ways you get to like properly hear someone give like a pretty in-depth analysis of different things and speak their mind, as opposed to just like, here's a 10-minute interview in which they're like talking about the movie that they were in, and it's like, where did you study? It's like, Mount View, next. And you're just like, cool. And it's just like, yeah, I guess I'll go and study. I guess I'm going to spend like 30 grand studying at Mount View, because someone said Mount View in an interview, and I was like, cool, that person's really good. That must be because they studied there. It's like, that might play a big factor in it, but it also might not. Like, they also might just be incredibly talented, went to the school, like, this school's pretty dog, and then they were like, okay, fair, well, I studied there, I guess they're going to put my name on the wall now, even though like I didn't enjoy it.
It's why I think talking to current students at places so useful.
Yeah, and also when people finish their degree, like to give a good like view of like what they found once they finished it, and like being like, cool, have you found that it was useful? Like some people are gonna be like you speak to a lot of people throughout life, and it's like, did you enjoy your degree? And they're like, yeah, I mean, like I studied economics. And you're like, cool. And so how did you start becoming like devising theatre and stuff? And they're like, oh yeah, no, I learned from that degree that never to do anything to do with economics because I hate it. And you're like, that makes so much sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Like,
we'll get some grads on and see what they've got to say.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a really interesting perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I love doing what we're doing currently. I think it's super exciting, and I think what you've got with Carnifolk is super exciting. Something I like to mention is the fact that because we're both young, entering the industry, like 5 years down the line, kind of looking back on an episode like this and being like, seeing where you are then, you know?
Yeah.
See where Carnifolk is.
Seeing where Carnifolk is then in the next kind of
Yeah.
couple years, 3, 4, 5, like, I'm potentially talking to the next, you know, big names in the industry, the next creatives, the next
Yeah, for
people
sure.
who are doing things.
And people would be like, "Oh yeah, no, I was no name, and I was getting podcasted by Jacob," and they were like, "Oh yeah."
Wow, you really pulled that out. Okay, maybe I have to include those bloopers then.
Oh no, you definitely do.
Well,
They're
you
a
made me do it
fundamental
now.
part of the podcast.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I also think that when, like, for example, a famous person, like when they've got their fans want to know more about them. Being able to listen to like pretty high quality, like an interview of them as a young person, I think that's also like really helpful.
It gives context. It gives a lot of context to how people how people develop, and also who they were at certain points.
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
like, in 5 years, I might listen back to this and be like, "What was I talking about?
Yeah. You might.
Who was this guy?" And you might look back. In fact, you probably look back at some of your first podcasts, and you're like,
Oh,
and
I
you're
do.
like, oh
Yeah,
my
I do.
God,
Yeah.
like,
Well,
I can't believe that, like, anyone listened to 2 hours of that, in which you're like,
Yeah. But like you learn from it, you know. I mean, I've been podcasting
for
for like
sure.
3 years now, and so there are ones of me at 15 on Zoom doing it with a couple mates,
"Oh, that's amazing."
and it is awful. But what's so good though is that you can see like how much you've grown and improved as a character.
yeah, for sure.
And I think if I do a thing where I maybe come back to old guests, maybe like 2 years on, you know, I do another episode with you in 2 years' time, and then in another like 4 year time after that. By the time we're like in our 30s, really solid in the industry, there's like this whole timeline of like your development.
Yeah.
And I think that's also like really cool. But I also think with podcasts, especially with what we're putting out, they're not these like short growing episodes. They're not something that you put onto the internet. The algorithm pushes it to like 10,000 people, and it's like, wow, it's gone viral. Like loads of people like it because of this 10-minute funny clip. It's like things that provide value years down the line. And some of, you know, these episodes that we've put out there, people maybe in 4 years looking, so for Bird College, which is where I go, could watch the episode. Like they're long growers.
You could say you're building your own community.
Potentially. Yeah. I mean, we definitely don't have a community as strong as the one that you've built with Carnifolk, like the ones that reoccur.
No, but I feel like you're not giving it credit to it, because you were talking about I think we were off camera at the time. You were talking about how you speak to some people at your uni, and like they talk to you like they've spoken to you a bunch, and because like they've listened to the podcast and they listen to you have conversations with people as if they were like a fly on the wall, in which it's like they feel like they're a third person in that conversation. And people often get that, in which they're like, I think that's why so many people, and why podcasts have like absolutely boomed recently, is because people, well, first off, because people love having stimulation all the time. And so having something in your ears while you're doing something else is like, cool, I can wash the dishes and consume more content.
I know. It's very
but
true.
also like people get to feel like they've got more connection. Like that's why people love YouTubers. Like they get to sit and they get to watch someone talk about stuff, and like they get to see all this content in which someone's just being themselves, or a version of themselves, in which they get to like kind of connect with that. And with podcasts, like people are listening to you and listening to the conversations you're having, and feeling like, oh yeah, like I'm just one of the 3 people in the room having this conversation. It's like they're getting a lot from that. And I feel like that's why people connect so much with podcasts, is because they also get to have these, there might be one-sided relationships, but like it does a lot for them, and they learn quite a bit from it.
I think, I mean, this might get quite deep now. I think there are some pros and cons to that. And it's something that I have thought about, but I'm now thinking about more because you've brought it up, is there being that pressure to then deliver in person. Because when I podcast, I put on a heightened version of myself. I put on a more energetic, like I only have to do it for an hour. And a lot of the time, like I've had friends who like have helped behind the scenes and stuff. I notice I go on, I'm this big personality or whatever, I'm doing a good job, and I come off and I'm just exhausted. I'm like, that really took it out of me. So then having, at say, college or a university now, goodness, to feel like that there are lots of these people, because I've done so many episodes centered around big characters at my university, that there's this expectation for me to still be like that, and it's not.
Yeah.
And I don't like it that much, because when I'm actually in person, and if you see me around uni and in person, I'm not like this all the time. I can be, but a lot of the time I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted from a long 10-hour, say, rehearsal day. I'm hungry, and so then it's that feeling of like I've got to keep delivering to people this person that they've listened to for however many hours or how many episodes. But I don't do that. But then I start to worry that there's this bit of a letdown, and then I've had people come to me and they've been like talking about like something they've seen in a clip, and I'm just like, yeah, cheers, thanks. Or like someone will say, oh, I love your podcast, and I'm like, oh, they're like, oh, you have a podcast? I was like, oh, yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. Like, and I always kind of just play it off and move on with that conversation. When actually looking at it, like they've kind of had this expectation of like what I'm like, but I'm not like this every second of the day. I'm like this for the hour and a half that I do recording.
You can't be. That's the thing. Like when I play Marvin the Mushroom Man, it's like I am kind of like that all the time, because I do kind of like I ponder and I plop around like Winnie the Pooh. And like I work quite slowly, but at the same time it's like I'm also like you're also not playing the same character, and you're just a different person, and it's like that's also okay. Like when you're talking to people and it's like yeah, that's I'm not always like that. It's like it also gives people an idea in which it's like they might have a preconceived notion, but everyone has preconceived notions of everybody all the time.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's like you always expect, like there's also some people that you have that are probably at uni in which it's like you see them, they're loud and boisterous, when they go home they're like, oh, because they're socially drained, and it's like you aren't, so you might be tired at uni because you've done lots of physical stuff, but it's like right now you probably haven't just finished 10 hours of dancing. Maybe you have. I don't know what you did with the rest of your day, but
it hasn't been a very dance heavy day. No, it's more academic.
But yeah, it's like it depends on how people get you, and I think it is also just a bit of a reality check for people, and
I guess
there will
that's
be
true.
Expectations in which it's like they expect you to always be like this, but at the same time it's like this is also real life, in which it's like like true. they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe you were just tired, in which it's like, yep, I'm a person, I'm allowed to be tired.
Yeah,
like,
I know. I just don't want to like let people down. I mean,
no one does.
I say that. I don't put any effort in to be like this when I'm with people. Like I've made it very clear, like I'm just gonna be me. Although people have said like I talk like I'm in a podcast quite a lot. I've got like they say like, Josh, you're in your podcast voice. It's like I'm interviewing my friend whilst walking down the street. It's like, I'm sorry, I try and crack out of that. My teachers called me Podcast Josh as well.
That's amazing.
It's become a thing in my MT, my MT tech, and I'm like, yeah. I've just stopped paying attention to it now. I just like move on. Like, there's all podcasts. Josh has got a question. I don't even like comment. I mean, it's not like it's a bad thing.
You'd hope that they'd kind of like chill on that, in which it's like, come on, like you've got to also like take me as a normal person. Like, please, like I'm not just like a podcast hosting all the time. Like,
I mean, I do ask like good questions, like I would hopefully in a podcast, but I don't know. It's taken over a lot of my life.
Yeah.
What about Carnifolk? Has that taken up a lot of yours? Or did it?
Yeah. I think it's because I think it took a lot of time, and it took up so much energy, and like the turnaround time of every 2 weeks. It's like you're trying to squeeze in like 2-3 rehearsals in between, along with making sure like you've got the social media and all the production stuff that you're doing for it. In which it's like, it's a lot, and there's a lot of people that are doing lots of different things to make it run and to make it beautiful and weird and wild every time. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like I really enjoyed just turning my brain off when I go home, and I'm like, cool. Like I found that I was so busy with everything that it became a bit much. Like I was doing all the Carnifolk stuff. I was hosting the open mic still every Wednesday, which is right after the Tuesday. And then was also working a full-time job, because obviously you got to pay rent somehow.
Yeah.
And if you're like, everyone come for free and like come enjoy and play with us, and then you have people come up and they're like doing the open mic, it's like I also have to like put a roof over my head.
That's very true.
In which it's like, so I was working at the Volley, the place that we were doing both the events, both in the kitchen and behind the bar. doing like putting it all together and being like, cool, like I'm surviving. And so yeah, I found it became. It was also because like most of the people I was interacting with were Carnifolk people, in which it's like, but there's so many of them that it was like, it doesn't feel like a bit much. But I imagine with a podcast, the only consistent thing is you, pretty much.
Yeah.
With Carnifolk, it's like, because it's open, we have new people coming in each time, and everyone's just coming and hanging out, and it's like there's some groundwork, but at the same time, everyone is just playing. And that was kind of also a focus, is that it's like we wanted to make sure that it's like it never felt like a hassle. Like,
yeah,
if you're doing Carnifolk, you're doing it because it's something that you're doing. You're going to come and play. You're going to come enjoy it. You're going to come be silly and have fun. And like, it might be a bit stressful, but at the same time, if it becomes too stressful and you find like, actually, it's not fun, I'm not enjoying it, then it's like, stop. Like, just take a break. Take a break. Come back. Like, there's so many people that are loving it and are pushing it forward that it's like, it's not reliant on one person. In which it's like, I found that quite a relief. That being said, I did spend loads of time and effort on it. But
it's so rewarding though, isn't
it?
Like, you want to spend loads of time and effort on it.
Like, when I was on the last episode, like I gave this like speech to say goodbye, and was just like crying, looking at this like huge crowd of people who were all dressed up in like, there's like under all these like beautiful fairy lights, and they're all dressed up in their like their elf ears and their like full costumes and their full like furry like outfits of like they've got like different furs on them, not like furry as in like big wolf people.
I know what you mean. I know. Yeah. I understand.
And like looking at these amazing people, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, this wasn't a thing. And we've all worked together to just make this, and it's so beautiful. And yeah, so it's the most rewarding thing I've ever worked on, and continue to work on, and continue to still feel like even though I'm not involved in any of the productions for season 2 in Bristol, like I'd go back for people's like birthdays and like to go and celebrate things with people, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm just back seeing these people and they're so amazing. It's so rewarding that like it became a big part of who I am. But I was like, I'm so happy it has been, because it's such an amazing thing. And like, definitely it was odd coming to London and it not being something that it's like pretty much all my friends that, well, like most of my friends that I interact with either come and attend or are working on it. That's one of those things also that it became one of those things that whenever I'd meet someone amazing, I'd be like, oh, like, you didn't need to come to Carnifolk. Like, you'll love it. And like, it'll be so much better with you in it, because like anyone can contribute, in any way, you know? And so it just became one of those things that it just became feeling like part of me was just part of Carnifolk. So yeah, it became a huge part of who I was and who I am. But like, I'm also glad for it. I don't want it to, like, a lot of the time people and practitioners don't want one project to be the thing that defines them. But like, I was thinking about it and I was like, if Carnifolk is the best thing I ever do, I'm so fine with that, because
That's
it's
so
so
nice.
amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, and I had this conversation with like everyone, and I was like, this is the best thing I've ever done ever. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Like, this is also the best thing I've ever done ever. I'm like, yeah. Everyone who does this is like, this is so good that it's like, I was like, yeah, I actually don't mind if this is like the coolest thing. Like, obviously, you don't want it to get boring for yourself and that kind of thing. But then you just adapt. You just make it something that's like, if it's like, and obviously if it's a community thing in which it's like you've got lots of different voices and stuff, and it ends up being something that you're like, this doesn't feel creatively stimulating for me or something like that, then it's like, cool, take a break, maybe come back to it in a bit. Everyone else is going to continue on with the path and is going to love it. And it's like, yeah, cool. But if even just what happened in Bristol is the coolest thing I've ever done, I was like, yeah, I'm happy with that.
It's a really nice way of thinking about it. And actually, I want to go on to the quite big topic now of motivation, because I think this ties into everything that you can do in life and the mentality around it as well. Because you doing Carnifolk has been a lot of work, and so you would have needed to be motivated to do it. And motivation can come and go. It can chop and change. And I think if your mentality's in the wrong place, it can make it really difficult to keep that motivation. I think when you talk in the sense of YouTube, lots of people, their mentality is, I want to get famous quick. When that evidently doesn't happen, they then give up. And then it's not something that can be sustained. So if people are still kind of watching this, I completely forgot to say like, subscribe. But I don't. It is what it is.
Comment too.
Leave a nice little comment. If you're an hour and 20 in, I'm very impressed. But in terms of like your everyday life and how your mentality is, and then also if you are a drama student, a theatre kid, wanting to do things similar, create your own work, create your own theatre company, making sure your mentality is in the right place, I think is so important. And from this conversation, I've got the impression that your mentality is in the right place because you've managed to get your company as far as it has gone. And so, I wanted to kind of us to talk about the people watching and like what they can do for their future endeavours to make sure that they are thinking right in terms of the way they approach their work.
I'd say like what I found is that like it's when the first like 3 years I was in the UK, I was pretty much not doing anything. I was just like working and hanging out and like traveling and stuff, but like I wasn't really doing anything creative, and like my intention was to go to drama school, and I was like, I'm gonna study and I want to do theatre stuff. And I thought, why am I not then? Like, why am I spending all this time just waiting like to do it? Like, it's drama school's not going to be the thing that lets me know whether or not I love theatre. Like, I know I love theatre, but like if I can't do it now and feel like I needed the degree before I go on with it, then like that's probably indicates to me that this isn't the type of thing I should do. And I was like, okay, well, having not done anything creative for the last few years, like I should just throw myself into it.
Totally.
And so with the Carnifolk, like I got a date, like our deadline date of like when we'd be able to do our first performance thing, before we had anything. I was like, cool, wow, come 16th of May, we better have something. Otherwise, like, we're going to make a bit of an embarrassing performance. But yeah, so as just throwing yourself into it, you hear it everywhere. Just like, you just start doing it. And I think people a lot of the time think of things like particularly with like starting like theatre companies and stuff. People always, it sounds like a theatre company. Like it sounds so intimidating, right? But what is a theatre? A theatre company is literally just like
a group of people.
A group of people that make theatre, in which it's like, do it with your mates, do it with anyone, that make a Facebook group and be like, cool, like, does anyone want to like put together like a show or something that like, even if you just like perform it to like a random group, like even if you just put it together and like re-perform a play that you guys all love, and it's like, cool, like just put it together, because like all small projects and stuff, it's like you only learn from doing it. And I think in terms of motivation, like if you know you love doing theatre stuff, and even if you don't, like just trying it out, like it's like such an accessible thing. Like I say that like in South Africa there's a huge like a lot of the theatre in South Africa is like protest theatre, and I think it's what Grotowski dubs like poor theatre, which is theatre made with like no budget. Like you have like maybe like you have a crate, and the crate is like what you base everything around. And
sounds
like,
very date, like your date course.
Yeah. It's like you basically like making theatre in which it's not reliant on there being like a whole bunch of stuff around you. It's like you're just like, you don't need it. Like the act in itself is performing. You're performing and you're putting on something, and you're sending like performance is just communication, and you're just like the act of performance is just like communicating a message and trying to connect with people. And it's like you can do that with no money. You can do that with one person with two people with a whole cast of people and producers and lighting people and all that kind of thing. And yeah, I say just try it. If you have theatre friends, or even if you don't, like, just trying to find people that are interested in just trying it and giving it a go. Yeah, I'd say, like, try and make a random theatre company, like, write something, or even put on something that's already been written.
Yeah, like, you've got to start somewhere, don't you?
Do something that costs nothing. It's like, it's not the type of thing in which you need lots of equipment and you need to be paying people. It's like, just try it. Like,
I mean, everything starts somewhere, and if it's something you're interested in, no matter your age, you've just got to, like, take that leap and then give it a try. I love linking things back to the podcast, but, like, my first time doing podcasting was just me and a couple friends on a Zoom call that we recorded and stuck onto YouTube. Like, that's where we started. If you think of, like, these billionaires out there, like Amazon or whatever, they started in just a little garage. And they built. Doing a theatre company, here's my prediction. You've started, and you've come over and you've started in a pub.
Yeah.
And you've built this amazing... And you just started, you and your friends in a pub. 5-10 years down the line, man, whole warehouses, like, massive theatres.
We've already looked at it. We've already looked at that kind of stuff.
Damn.
In which it's like that we've already because we've been setting goals, and it's like we've been meeting those goals really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And so we're already looking at, like, if we can, like, bag these type of venues that are looking for this kind of work. Like, how would
you're
we
there
expand
already,
it?
which is so cool.
No, we're not there already.
No.
That the goals are.
You're like thinking about that. So that's what I mean. You're, like, at that stage where you're thinking about that already, which is so cool. Which is why I just have that kind of that belief that I think I can just see what you've created kind of going to that scale, because it's such a good idea. It's so unique and clearly successful. But it does link in. Everyone's got to start from somewhere.
Sure.
If you're someone who's interested in doing anything, just do it, you know? And I think it's the whole thing about mentality of, okay, I'm going to use my McDonald's fast food analogy, which is kind of how I think about how things... Our generation have got fast everything. Yeah. They've got fast fashion. You know, you can go onto Boohoo, you can go onto any of these sites, you know, and get the latest fashion from there, and it's kind of quick. It gets to your door the next day. Amazon next day delivery. You've got fast food. If you're hungry, you want a burger, it takes like 2 minutes. I think our generation is so used to just things being given to them so quickly. Fast content, even. You know, like every day you've got these YouTubers posting new things, high quality.
Yeah.
Where you used to be at a stage where for Netflix, whatever, you'd have to wait, or TV show, a week before you got the next thing, and like you were made to have that suspense and to wait. People are just so used now just being able to get things the next day, and I think we're so used to that. And I think now that started to bleed in, especially when I listen, just listening to the way people talk and the way people view things, whether this is on the street or your mates or people from if you do like a workshop somewhere, like the way people want things quickly, but success or doing well doesn't work like that. Now the media give us the few cases of someone who kind of their career or whatever blows up over the course of a couple of weeks, and do feel free to kind of like jump in on this. But I think because of this fast food way of thinking, people want to do well quickly. Yeah, and I don't think that's possible. Not
most
for
things
everyone.
Build slowly, like
yeah,
and getting to grips with that. I think the reason I find it easy with theatre stuff is like you're doing it with a group, and like I always find group stuff. Like I'm a very social person.
Yeah,
doing group stuff is easy. It's like it's a lot easier, and it feels like more stimulating. So it's like even if you're absolutely bailing on it, like you're doing it in a group, and you're doing it, and like I get what you mean in terms of like it being people expecting things to come quickly, but it's like if you're gonna fail, like failing in a group feels a lot nicer. Yeah, and it's like you can build stuff slowly in a group, and it feels a lot more. It feels a lot less isolating. Yeah, like a lot of the, like talking about like overnight successes and a lot of that kind of thing. Like you see a lot of the like YouTubers and stuff, and it's like they become huge. And it's like, oh, this overnight sensation. It's like, but it's like, yeah, but they probably have hundreds of videos, in which is like, most of that generation of like YouTubers, for example, spent a lot of time just being really lonely in their dorm rooms or their bedrooms in wherever they're from, just like sitting on the computer, getting involved with internet culture, and then like making all this content, and then eventually they started to get better and better, and then at some point, like, you create your own luck and you create your own success.
I agree.
And it's like they had all this, a lot of, like, I say they, like, in this huge general sense, but like, but like eventually something's probably going to do well, right?
Yes.
And it's like, if you keep on at it, eventually like something's going to connect with people and something's going to do well. And it's like I feel incredibly lucky that like the first big project I've ever worked on like connected with so many people. But it's like, even if it had bailed, like, it would have been 10 of us having a good time, like hanging out, and then we'd be like, well, that was pretty shite. How do we work on it for the next one? And then you just build it from there until eventually it's like, cool. Now we have something that actually works.
Yeah, and I think that's where mentality ties into it, because if you're going into things with this fast culture mindset of like, I just want it to do well, it's going to be very difficult. Whereas if you have ulterior motives to keep doing something, so it was been very clear that for Carnifolk, your other reason for doing it is it's you and 9 friends, 10 friends, is 10 of you, whatever.
It ended up being like 40 something.
Oh wow, okay. Well, you and a lot of friends, just coming together and having fun. Even at the beginning, you were saying like, if it didn't do well, it was just you and your mates just having some fun, enjoying your evening, putting on this kind of world, and you can sustain that without the rewards of having an audience turn up. Like, you can do it to just have fun. And I think if you're wanting to kind of go into the industry just in general, and you know, a lot of people, why do you want to go into the industry? They want to work, they want to have a job, they want to do well. But if you can find an ulterior motive that will just keep you going through the ups and downs, I think that's how you kind of sustain. Like these YouTubers that you're talking about, and like the kind of big names obviously didn't come overnight, but I don't think they were doing it from the beginning to be rich, to be a millionaire, to have a million subscribers. They were doing it because they enjoyed making videos. They had fun doing it. They learned.
A tiny little community.
Yeah.
And that community became huge, but it was a tiny little community in which is like for a lot of these people, they were their only friends, and which is like these people that watch me like are the only friends that I have, and which it's like, then that's what keeps them going, and which is like, and then it becomes this huge thing and it grows and grows and grows. Yeah,
and I think like we get told all the time like the secret sauce to doing well, like buy my course and get told. I think it just comes down to enjoying what you do and just making sure that each time you do it, you try and find a way to improve it.
I think if succeeding is the thing that drives you, and if you don't succeed, you'll stop, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
Like if
find something else to do.
Yeah, find something else to do. Like, you shouldn't be doing something if succeeding is the only thing that you want out of it. Like, if failure is fine, then that's perfect. Like, cool, go for it.
Yeah.
Like,
you should do it.
Like, you should do it. You should do it if you shouldn't do it with the only option being success.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you should go in, like, for some people and in like different walks of life and stuff, it's like success is the only thing that will help them like get out of a specific situation and stuff. But it's like in theatre and stuff, it's like if it failing is like going to be a deterrent, then you probably it's one of those things, you need to be pretty fucking vulnerable. Sorry.
No, absolutely.
You need to be pretty vulnerable to like create performances and create theatre and all this kind of thing. And it's like, if it failing is going to be the type of thing that deters you, you probably shouldn't do it. You should probably look at something that's a little bit safer, that or maybe that's the thing you need to work on.
Yeah,
maybe that's the thing that's like, I need to get comfortable with the idea of it not doing well before I go into it. That way it takes that weight off. Because if you're going into it with the weight of like, if this fails, I'm going to have to find a different career, then it's like,
Yeah.
like do something that you can feel vulnerable and be like, oh, I really, really want this to do well. And it's like, of course you want it to do well. You should want it to do well. But if it fails, that shouldn't be the type of thing that's like, okay, well, I guess something else.
Because
then.
people can take years of auditioning before they finally get their first kind of big piece of work, their first big job. And if you gave up after a couple months, or if you were in the mentality beforehand of wanting success, you're probably going to give up after a couple months.
Yeah.
And even if you really want to do well, you want to land a big West End job, and you want anything in your life that you're working on to succeed, and that's your goal for it. And you push really hard for a year. That year you go, you do loads, and then at the end of the year, that particular goal hasn't been achieved, and you'll think nothing's come by it. You're then going to look back and you're going to think, oh, you've wasted that year. You've wasted all that time. But actually, if you go through and and it's your mentality, is the way you're thinking about it, is everything you're doing in that process are all these little achievements that you might not get there by the end of that year, but you look back and you see, but I've done so much to kind of get to this point, and yes, I'm not at that place yet, but maybe I'll just go for another year. And you keep building things, and then if you've got that slow but steady, then I think you will get somewhere, because you're not giving up,
all a process.
and you're finding your own success, whatever that means to you. An example I like to use is, for example, this podcast. Our goal at the very beginning, and I made this very clear for the little team that we'd created, I didn't necessarily care about getting thousands. I mean, we're not even there, but I don't necessarily care about getting thousands of subscribers. I don't necessarily care about making lots of money from it, if any money from it. Primarily, there we go. Oh man, it's been a very long episode, but a very good episode. My primary reason for doing it was because I wanted to talk to people, and views aside, subscribers aside, if I could get it to a place where I could start interviewing people from different walks of life, like other people that I didn't know, because I'd been getting my friends on.
Yeah, of course.
So people from maybe different drama schools. If I could get it to where I'm talking to West End professionals, where I'm talking to people who provide me with value, like, I didn't make any money from it, but I've networked. And I think in the industry that we're currently in, you need to be able to network with people, because a lot of it is about kind of who you know.
It's all about, I think, it can be quite vicious, but it's also about connecting and trusting.
Yeah.
Which is basically the fundamentals of networking. Is people connecting with you and being like, Matt, I actually with projects and stuff, people need to trust that getting you involved will help them make their idea come to life. And it's
totally.
The more you get to know people, the more they can kind of suss you out and be like, yeah, this creative pursuit, I can trust you to help me with this, and I can trust that your intentions are in the right place and that you care about this type of thing.
Yeah, totally. I think success comes down to mindset. I think if your primary goal for whatever you're doing is just to be the best, or to make all the money, or to do the best, I think it's gonna be very difficult. But I think you've got that really well with Carnifolk. Is you're having fun. You're doing it because you're with your friends, and you've just kind of had all of this just come out of nowhere.
We were succeeding before we had an audience. The success was in the fact that we got to know one another, and we created so much energy and love, and community. The fact that we could share it with people, and people could get involved, and then it would be open, was a really welcomed side effect of that. But I think that's also another thing, is being oriented around success and what that means to you, because most people thinking what you want to get out of it, because people might want to be on the West End because it'll make them lots of money, or that everyone will know their name. But it's a lot of the time it's but is that going to be the thing that once you get there, that's going to make you feel satisfied? Because it's if you don't get that, then it's you're probably gonna stop that career path, in which it's but if you just love performing, and like your main goal is that you'll keep a roof over your head, but like you'll consistently be able to get things that interest you, and it's like
and keep
like,
getting better as well.
Yeah, you'll improve, and you'll be getting interesting jobs in which you get to challenge your own thoughts and feelings about different things, and challenge yourself to do different things. And it's like, if like you need to, I think it's also important to question what success is to yourself.
Yeah.
And also just be gentle to yourself. People aren't gentle enough to themselves and their own thinking.
Yeah, I think because people have this mindset of this fast culture of wanting to get things, and I think people maybe just need to have a reflect on their mindset. Now, my mindset isn't perfect. You know, a lot of the time I can be. Yeah, but it's true. A lot of the time I can be very much like glass half empty. I think surrounding yourself with people who can remind you, but also trying to remind yourself very much how you think about things can be very helpful. And I think that our generation maybe just need to reflect just individually on like what matters to them.
Yeah.
And whether their like motivation for doing certain things is right, because I hear so frequently people talking about like what they want and like whatever, and like money has become like very important for everyone. People, you know, want so badly to have money, and I think just really just having a think about like what's actually important, like why are you doing this, and not having that pressure that I feel like people maybe put on themselves or put on others in terms of like defining what success is.
I think it's also one of those things. It's like it's easy to say like that money doesn't matter and stuff when you're coming from like a pretty privileged position, because a lot of people aren't coming from a position in which that could be a thing in which it's like money doesn't matter. Like it's all about making sure you get like jobs that you find interesting and that help you like skill up and that kind of thing, or upskill.
I guess when I say money in this sense, I mean like money. I
mean
like
getting filthy
wealth.
rich. Yeah,
wealth.
Yeah.
I'll change that word then, because what you said is totally right. Wealth doesn't matter.
And I think it's one of those things. That's why you see a lot of, like in a lot of drama schools, like a lot of people are very privileged, and I think that's because.
Yes.
It's because you with the privilege of not having to be focused on bringing money into the family and earning a whole lot. Like you have the privilege to also go to like drama lessons, and like if you fail at what you want to do and you're like, I guess it's not for me, then it's like, it's not like, oh my god, you spent like so much money and now you're in debt and you don't want to. It's like, yeah, you have the privilege to try and fail and do something that's like interesting and often doesn't make a whole lot of money. Like I kind of accepted that I was like, yeah, the career path I'm going down is probably like, it's unlikely there's going to be a whole lot of money in it. Like I'm probably always going to be working in some form, like hospitality or some kind of thing on the side, in which it's like, that's keeping the bills paid and that kind of thing. But it's an enormous privilege to be able to do that kind of thing, even if it's you don't have the support, but to acknowledge that you have that privilege of being able to go down an avenue that and you can even play with the idea of failure in that kind of way. So I do want to clear that up, because I talked about a lot about like, don't be worried to fail and that kind of thing, but it's like some people don't have that privilege in which, but then again, like, yeah, it's a lot of the time people that are in drama schools are coming from a lot of privilege.
My eyes got really opened up onto what you just said because of the conversations I've had with my friends from Portugal. So I did an episode about being an international student, and the amount that they have to go through, and like the amount they've gone through to get here, like it's been so difficult.
Yeah.
Especially as with the way the loans work. Well, they don't get a loan.
It's a tough one.
And then have to pay
because of that.
Yeah. Then have to pay like double as well for fees. Don't get a loan. And so there are things like bank loans, and there are things like having to work a lot.
Yeah.
And like the fact that their family has to make such a huge sacrifice for them to be here. has really opened like my eyes up actually on like this is it. Like they've come here to train for a reason, and you can see it reflect in terms of the work ethic.
Yeah.
They're never not working hard. You know, I was in I've never done tap before, so I'm in a tap support class, and one of the there's an international girl who was in there, and she was saying like she was injured and was sat out watching, and she was like, I'm just so like confused why people would want to sit out. Like, she was saying she hates the fact that she was sat out, and she was like, I you know I want to get up, I want to be doing stuff. And I was like, why do people like want to sit out? Why do people skip classes? Like,
Yeah.
and
It's a
but
huge
you
thing at
see
our
it
school
quite a lot.
too.
You see it.
Like, there's so many people skip classes, and like it's like I consider myself very privileged. I'm South African and I'm white, so therefore off the bat the fact that I had food on my table means that I'm in top 1%. Like, most of the country live below the breadline, so it's an enormous privilege to be able to both make your rent and eat food and that kind of thing. And I went to like a pretty good school given I was on scholarship, but like still and so like my childhood, like I always grew up quite middle class, and I was like, yeah, I didn't feel struggle in the same way a lot of South Africans have. But coming to this country, it's like, by comparison, it's like I don't like even come close to the levels of privilege that you see here, and it's really eye opening because like I get so infuriated when people don't come into class. Caitlin's busy nodding behind the camera, but like, yeah, like people are like, I'm like I guess because I've had a few years out, maybe it makes more sense to me that it's like I'm taking like a £30,000 loan to pay for my studies, and then probably plus another 30,000 to survive, and I'm still gonna be working a job just to put food on the table. And it's like the fact that like that's a reality, and it's like, and people are coming straight from sixth form.
Sixth form.
Yeah, sixth form
College.
Into university, and they're like, oh, like I like we for our course we have to be in 3 days a week, and it's like people are skipping classes, and it's like people are skipping classes. You're not even in uni for most of the week. Like you're in 3 out of 7 days, and you're still skipping classes and like pulling up without having read any of the pre-preparation stuff. You're paying £30,000 just to be there.
Yeah, it's very much the same. I see it quite a lot. And I think that's probably goes for most universities and most courses. We had an email from the head teacher about attendance, and I was like, I'd understand why you'd get that at, you know, community college where I was before. And I understand because people won't be interested in the topics. Like I hated having to do geography. I hated but I wouldn't skip a class.
You don't want to be there, so
I
you
didn't
choose
like
not
it.
to be
And so
there.
I'd understand why there'd be emails about attendance then, but I was like, an attendance email at a place where you're actually paying, like where the education isn't free, because, you know, education for sixth form was free. Education here costs a lot of money.
But also, like, people are paying, like, you're at drama school. Like this is not the type of thing that it's like your parents are forcing you to go to drama school. Like,
I know.
Like, whose parents? Like, yeah, like your parents are like, please do something that will be like have financial security. Like, like be a dentist. Like, come on, like teeth. But no one's forcing you to go to drama school, and you've chosen to go to drama school, and you're still not coming into classes, and you're still not putting in the effort to like get the information out. Like, it doesn't. It baffles me, and it is just like it's like the pinnacle of like privilege, in which it's like, holy crap! Like you're paying ridiculous sums of money that in most places in the rest of the world, like that would be enough to live on for like the whole year. In fact, it is here too, barely, but like it's a vast sum of money, and people just like people take it for granted, and I do find it quite infuriating. And I think it's also important to recognize that privilege, and I think it's important to do that in general, like especially in the arts, and as practitioners, to recognize like where you're like what privileges you have, because it also makes you grateful for what you have in your life and what's available to you. And I think it's one of those things that people always take it with like a negative connotation, that it's like being privileged is bad. It's like, it's not bad. It just means that you've got it pretty good, and like acknowledging that you've got it pretty good is like really important, because otherwise you're not being appreciative. It's like, so just appreciating and being like, mad, like a lot of people don't have this opportunity. A lot of people don't have this privilege of being able to do this kind of thing, and it's like appreciating it and not taking it for granted is so important. And also just having a fulfilling and enjoyable life, and being like, the things you have, be mindful, like what you have and what's available to you is amazing, and you should try and like, I struggle with it. I don't always do it, like, but I try to, and I think it's very important for people to do that in general.
I think just trying to,
if you've got lots of, I don't know what the general audience is, but if you've got lots of practitioners that are coming in that are like starting out their careers and stuff, I think it's incredibly, it's one of those things. It's incredibly important throughout your work, and it will help your work a lot to be questioning and challenging those things, and also recognizing those things in everything that you do.
I'm not actually 100% sure exactly who my audience is. From statistics, fired, knocking the camera. Is it still lined? Are we still good? Yeah. From statistics, it looks like it's majoritively 18 to 20, late 20s, and majoritively women, like 70%. And I think that probably makes sense, because in the industry as a whole, there are a lot more women.
Yeah.
But men in higher places.
Men in all the higher parts of the institutions, and then like it's still like almost all women.
Yeah.
That are like in every other position. Like in our course, I think, or no, in contemporary performance, which is made up of like, I think 100 people, something like that. I think there's probably about 10 people that use masculine pronouns max. Like we're probably under 10% in like, just in general. It's like, it's very much like, like everyone behind the scenes, like on stage it seems like it's a lot more like diverse, but like off stage not so much. It's still mainly white people. It's still like it's still, and then all the high positions is all men. So like, everything that's off stage and that isn't shown to an audience is not very diverse. Although it's really cool that it's there's a lot of women in the industry. Although it'd be nice if like it was a bit more spread out in terms of like women in higher positions. Yeah,
totally.
Because you'd imagine that would reflect, right? Mm-hmm. That considering there's so many women in the industry, you'd imagine behind the scenes, you'd imagine that out of that group, the 1 in 10 men, like the 1 in 10 that's a guy, wouldn't happen to get the fast route up. But
it's Kaitlin's loving this. It is crazy, but I think this may sound horrible. Don't need to take a deep breath. This may sound horrible in the sense of, give it a couple more years, I think a lot of these kind of old white men might pass away. And that is horrible to say.
I don't think,
but I think it's true.
I don't think that's a thing that we should have to wait for, though. I think a lot of
if
we check enough institutions, I feel like a lot of people have been there long enough, and it's like they can get the boot. It's not going to hurt them at all. It's not like, oh no, your 40-year career. But it's like, I feel like it would do a lot in terms of making the industry less predatory, and also like giving some more experiences and like more points of view, because it's like it becomes an echo chamber when everyone comes from the same walk of life and has experienced the same privileges. And I think that's also why it's incredibly important to have diversity in any group, is that it's like it makes it more of a even playing field. But even if you're just looking at from the arts perspective, the art created is going to be so much more nuanced, and it's going to reflect so much more, because you're going to have so many other different perspectives, and it's not going to be one of those things in which the movie comes out and you're like, interesting that like all the women are basically just like put like shown as like sex dolls, and then like all the guys are these huge macho guys, and it's like, that's because it's probably like everyone in the writing room are all like guys, and they're all like, oh yeah, that's definitely how it is in real life. That's like super realistic.
Yeah, I think it's the generations change we'll start to go in the right direction. But I think because we've still got a lot of old white men in power, it's going to be hard at the moment. A lot of the institutions have been having like a bit of a revamp, like you were saying about like you've had your 40 years, kind of time for a change. I'm seeing lots of like drama school, like educational institutions. There has definitely been a bit of a turnaround recently. I think Central's recently got a new
Josette.
We love Josette.
Yeah, future
Love
podcast
Josette.
guest, who knows?
Over you.
Obi, wow, yeah, like there definitely has
Josette's
been.
a phenomenal practitioner.
I'm so interested
And
to
she's still
potentially talk to her.
working and being a principal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she is such an interesting person from what I've heard that I would love to have a conversation with them.
I think one of the things also is that you see a lot with the institutions that like the changes they're still made by all the old white men who just who will just be like, yeah, everything on the surface level is going to be diverse, and then it's not going to be behind the scenes, which is why, like, when you look at theatre, it's like that. But I think it's really good that it's like, no, this is the principle.
Yeah.
It's not just like, yeah, we'll diversify, but like, it'll be diversity on everything you can see, but not like not like all the positions that will make the institutional changes.
Yeah, we have a lot of but we have a lot of European staff. Yeah, I feel like there's a name for it though, like faculty. Yeah, that is the word, faculty. Thank you. Yeah, good job. We've got a lot.
Actually, right.
Crazy, the woman's right.
Oh man, you made me look awful. But we've got a lot of European faculty, and I think that's been quite good, especially for international students trying to come and train in England.
Yeah.
Because a lot of places were like, here's your audition. They do the audition. They're like, oh, you're great. Do you have a British passport, by the way? They're like, no. They're like, oh, sorry, we can't take you. It's like, they've just paid and come to England to do the audition, and then you tell them. This is a true story. It's been said on the podcast, and it is awful. Like, I think it's good that at Bird they kind of have that, and it's nice to see other drama schools.
It opens the space.
Do the same.
Having people in the higher up positions, that like having a diverse like team behind that like run the institution, opens a space up to those people, and it's like it's so important to have for it to be open, to make it more accessible, because if it's not, then it's not friendly. It's not friendly to everyone, and it's not accessible to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's always going to be like nothing's ever going to be fully accessible. Nothing's ever going to be a fully safe space, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't always be the goal is to move towards that. And I think it's really important that institutions do in general.
Kaitlin, you seem to be on fire with knowing what I'm thinking about, which is basically what it is. So the word I'm trying to think of is to do with like, it's to do like, you know, like with classes, or it's like, I said it the other day about like champagne socialists. Like I feel like a lot of the higher ups in the industry, it feels very much like it's you know, the kind of a club, like a. I kind of get the feeling when I see like posts on Instagram of like exclusive. Andrew Lloyd Webber. There we go. As exclusive as what I was thinking of. Damn, she is on fire.
2 years.
Yeah, on fire in the sense of like you just know what I'm thinking.
2 years of mind reading.
Yeah, of like what is he on about?
You guys can't see it, but there's actually a whole script behind, just going at all times. Caitlin's just constantly typing it out. It's just being read out.
I mean, I'm always just thinking of things that I can't find the words for. You do put them in my mouth, which is
good.
Which is very useful.
I'm just good at
putting words in your mouth.
That makes me sound bad.
Have a
Turn the camera.
turntables.
I'm actually the mastermind behind the podcast.
Sure. But no, what I was thinking of is like there does feel like there's this exclusive kind of club, and you have to be like a certain type of person as well. Like you've got to have this kind of this power around you to kind of get through the ranks. And like I saw a post on Instagram the other day. It's like a music director who had done like an NYMT show, and like they were with on a project with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and then there was just a bunch of these people like posing for this photo, and like they just all looked so kind of like powerful and like kind of secure, And for anyone like wanting to kind of get to that level, it's very intimidating. It feels like you need to kind of have this kind of persona, and you've got to be this certain type of person. And
I think
it's just quite difficult to.
It gets built, that sense of security and that sense of like confidence of like, I'm where I am and I'm gonna stay here. Mm-hmm. It forms and gets, the more it gets reinforced, the more people get like that, which is why it seems so intimidating. Is because everyone's so sure of where they are, and they're like, I'm only going up from here. It's like everything's designed around me, and like it is designed to like work for me. It's
I think for young people entering, seeing that, it's just like,
for sure.
You know, hello.
Just hit the 2 hour mark.
Damn.
Okay, and that's enough of two white men talking about diversity and institutional changes.
Yeah, maybe we stop it there. God damn. I mean, that's an achievement, 2 hours. I haven't done that before.
Never?
Yeah. I mean...
They usually finish
I feel privileged.
1 hour is generally average.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 hour 15.
Oh, okay.
1 hour 15 was a lot.
You want to bear in mind that in post-production, you're probably going to speed up by 1.25 whenever I start talking. Because I do.
I know. I think the only moment of that would be the beginning, and otherwise, like 10 minutes in, it picked up.
You can
keep this in, cut this out, whatever. Me and Xander did a project together the other day, and it was verbatim, so we had to listen. We recorded us speaking, talk about what made us happy, and then you had to put the headphones in, and I spoke Xander's testimony to our class, but they couldn't hear him, they could just hear me speaking.
Do we repeat this? Because I think it's pretty interesting. I don't think that will probably catch it.
Kaitlin, come have a seat. I think it's the point of the podcast where if people have got this far, if they've stuck this long, I don't see...
Oh, we swapping?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just thinking, if they've got this far, they're not just going to click off now.
Yeah.
They might as well get to the end.
Welcome to the Kaitlin and Xander podcast.
Dun, dun, dun.
They've not seen me. They've not seen me on camera in ages. I know, now you've got a woman on the screen.
Crazy.
Woo! What I was saying is that Xander and I did a project together for one of our classes the other day, and we had to record. It was about verbatim theatre and verbatim formula by the amazing Sylvan Baker. Very interesting. And we spoke our testimonies into our phones and then put headphones in, and I spoke Xander's testimony and he spoke mine. And it was very interesting because afterwards, I spoke Xander's with the headphones in to our class watching, and they all said I could hear Xander. They were like, you I don't know what, how.
I think the term was essence.
Yeah, they could see me through you, and
they could
through
feel
me.
they could hear the essence of me through what you were saying. I think it's also to do with everyone has their own vocal, their own vocal choices and inclinations, and how they phrase things, and also the speed of it and stuff.
Your pauses are very
And when I was doing yours, everyone was also suddenly I was speaking so quickly, and I was just I think that's exactly what I would do. It was a lot more chipper, and it was I've probably never sounded that chipper in my whole life.
I didn't retract my statements. I changed my statements quite a lot, and I'd be I'd kind of reassure myself. Whereas Xander, it was really funny because actually I found it quite overstimulating, having you speaking and then me having to process what you're saying and say it at the same time. But I could kind of feel me, even though you speak quite slowly and pause a lot, you come up with a lot of volume of words, and so it was a lot to kind of process and take in, and then also say at the same time.
I pause a lot, I think, because I like to think about what I'm saying,
which I need to do.
I think you're very well spoken. I don't think you need to. I think you just process and release in a very consistent manner, as opposed to you can kind of tell. I probably I pause, and I think about what I'm gonna say. Well, I imagine my brain does this. I pause, my brain thinks about what I'm gonna say, and then I quite mopily go, and then get all the words out, and then I'm done.
And so I had a pause, and I was like, And then 1,000 words came out, and I was like, trying to
amazingly
trying to get everything out.
there.
I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun project, and like,
Yeah, that's super interesting as a thing to do. Yeah.
Verbatim theatre, check it out.
We've studied it a little bit.
yeah.
We have
I come home and tell Josh everything.
and I
You-
always get filled in.
You get excessively long voice
I'd
notes.
love to come and just join and sort the data central. It's really fun.
We'll do a day where we swap, and I'll go and do some MT training.
Oh yeah, you'd love it. It's so hardcore though. I mean, days.
Yeah.
No social life. We come home, we just want to sleep.
Fair. We'll have to get you some pigtails.
Pardon?
We'll have to get you some pigtails.
Pigtails.
Like
your
for
hair.
my hair, if you're gonna come and be
right,
me.
Of course. Is that your look? Do you go and wear pigtails or what?
Sometimes.
I always kind of assume that you've got pigtails in. It's like kind of braided in two different.
Yeah. I like to change it up with my hair. It's exciting. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was my segment. Do you want to come and
No.
round it
I'm
up?
enjoying the diversity on screen.
I'm always happy to be here. Cheers.
Actually, we've done several episodes now with Portuguese people. It's been pretty good.
Oh gosh, Josh, you sound. It's not a good sentence.
Yeah, dude. Right. I'll take lead of host as the only
We've
man
all
on screen. I have to immediately take lead. Do you want to close it out? I don't know how you guys usually do a podcast.
Are we going to wrap it up, or have you
outro.
got anything else that you want to ask?
Definitely. I mean, when we were with, am I not allowed to call them Portuguese people? Am I out Portuguese people?
No.
Oh, it's just the sentence. It just
It's
made
only
me.
because
The sentence just sounded funny.
I view it just in terms of reaching new audiences.
Yeah, no, of course.
And so because of the audience that we were reaching for them, we introed and done some of it in Portuguese, and they told me how to say.
Yes,
it.
the context was important to that
Yeah.
sentence. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. See, I just say things.
Ik kan tot ziens in Afrikaans, maar ik denk niet dat iemand zal
We're teaching Josh how to say
Afrikaans
movement theories in multiple
Is that
languages.
South African? I'm guessing.
Afrikaans, yeah. There's 11 official languages in South Africa.
There is, isn't there?
Because there was 72 in Uganda.
72? I thought it was less than that, like 30s.
No, 72.
I mean,
We
it makes
learnt
sense.
two.
You've got to bear in mind that, well, this is a whole different other conversation. but Africa, the countries within Africa are pretty much all made up by how the Europeans decided they wanted
Yeah.
to cut and dissect the continent.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, which is why there's like so many languages in each country. It's because the countries probably wouldn't be nearly as big nor speak as many languages if they got to choose, and
Yeah.
if they even
Have the choice.
if like the people that were there even wanted to have borders, which they had territories but not borders. But it's like
Yeah.
it was a very European concept to come and be like,
And a
here's,
lot-
here's the borders, and it's like anyone in these borders, you're now South African. It's like, but there's like 11 different languages because it's different
Yeah.
dialects, and none of us I don't. One side of the country is different to the other side, so it's like
Yeah, we were having a conversation about where we were from,
Mm.
and I was asking you about where you were from in South Africa, and you were like, "Oh, I'm like 8 hours from Cape Town." That was like
Yeah.
your reference as to, as to where you live.
8 hours from Cape Town is like from
But-
Newcastle.
Well, exactly. 8
Yeah.
hours in the UK, because we're so much tinier,
Yeah.
is a huge distance. But you're like, yeah, 8 hours from Cape Town. That's like
yeah,
where I
it's,
live.
it's in the same province. And then it's like you can drive for like 3 or 4 days from one side of the country
That's
to the other.
insane.
Um,
Insane.
Crazy.
But yeah, when
Yeah.
we went to Uganda over the summer, and they everywhere you went, they also spoke English, and I'm sure that probably translates to a lot of African countries because of the way.
Well, a lot of it is like a main language, isn't it?
Yeah, in the school we visited, they had to speak English at school.
It depends which colonial
Yeah.
power was in charge of which area. Like
Like
in
the French
in
in
Namibia,
certain
it's all
places.
German. Yeah, like in like Cameroon, it's like they speak French there. Some of the most beautiful like French.
Oh,
like,
I bet.
Listening to a Cameroonian accent, which is like so like buttery and smooth. Speak French. It's like
Which part of South Africa are you?
I
8 hours from Cape Town,
Yeah,
Josh.
8 hours. Well, like in the garden route, but then I moved to Cape Town and lived there for like I think 7 years. So I was in Cape Town for the most consistent amount of time. I moved. I grew up in like little random like hippie villages in the middle of nowhere that you had to drive 20 minutes to get signal to like make phone calls and shit with like no electricity and stuff. So it's like I moved around quite a bit, and then the place I was in most consistently was in Cape Town at the end.
Nice.
That's where I
How
had my
far
teenage
away is
years.
Durban?
Like 2-3 days. I think it's
I like
probably
that you go in days rather than hours. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
because I went to Durban and Cape Town
like you'd fly, like
Yeah.
if you were driving, you'd be like, it would be like
A road
It would
trip.
probably be, but it would probably be more expensive depending on how many people you're going
Yeah.
with, because it's like the amount of fuel and the amount of like where you're gonna sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's in South Africa, isn't it?
Hmm?
Durban.
Yeah.
so
It's in
we-
KwaZulu-Natal.
We'd gone to Durban. We were there for 3 weeks, and then I think we must have flown then to South Africa.
It's a humid area.
I hadn't realised it was so many days away.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. You. I mean, the flight's like, I don't know, like a few hours.
Yeah.
But it's like,
But that's like it would take 2-3 days to drive to Italy.
but you could also take like the coach.
Yeah.
But it would be like a long coach.
Mm.
That's a lot of sitting next to people eating.
You
like,
don't know.
like-
Oh,
Yeah, I
like
wouldn't like.
eating the cheese and onion chips, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
crisps. So,
I would not.
no, thank you.
that being said, because of the culture, taking a coach is so much more fun in South Africa.
Oh, I bet.
We went the most recently, and I went with Maya, my girlfriend, and she'd never been, and we took a coach. It was like 7 hours, and yeah, I mean, obviously you're sat next to someone, so of course
You just get chatting.
Of course, you're gonna have a really long conversation and know everything about their kids, and
I
and
love
they're gonna-
that.
And you're gonna be like munching on food and like, oh, this is the most South African thing ever. So we stopped, we were like an hour away from our destination. We stopped at a petrol station, so the driver could go and have a piss, and then like while we were all sat there, and people like, so the coach stops at random petrol stations, and you can go and get some like food and stuff, and like people just pop to the loo, and it's not like one of those things that's specific. It's just like if someone's like, "Can we stop for the loo?" It's like, yeah. And so he went to the bathroom, and like people went up. Like there was this guy who like went up and he like started the coach, and he like started the bus, and then like, and the guy was like trying to get in. He was like halfway through the bathroom, and he'd like run back, and then everyone would go and sit down again, and then he would like, oh guys, and then like he would like start going towards the bathroom again, and then like someone would go, and he would like.
That's so funny.
And then they did it too much, and I think the ignition or something like flooded the ignition or something like
Oh,
that,
yeah, it would've.
and they couldn't get the coach started, and we had to switch coaches.
Wow.
Just so we could make it to our flight to get back to the UK.
That is insane.
He was like, sorry, like I don't know, like when we're gonna be able to get going again. We were like, we're gonna miss our flight if we don't. He was like, made a couple phone calls and was like, someone's gonna come past in a bit. Like you can hitch a lift with them. And we were like, cheers, thank you. And they're like, but it's just like, people are just like, it's a lot more laid back.
It seems more chill.
Yeah. So a coach journey that would be a few days would be like, yeah, you're like getting to know some people, and a lot of the time they'll be like quite friendly.
That's really nice.
You'll make some interesting relationships.
Yeah, I wish that there was more of that culture. I've just moved in.
Culture in England is.
I've just moved
AirPods in,
to.
everyone's hoods up.
Yeah, I've just moved into student accommodation, and like I'll get in the lift and people don't speak to me. Like it's very isolating. And you know, we're from like little town in Devon, and everyone kind of knows everyone, so you end up chatting to people quite a
Yeah.
lot. And I was actually having a conversation with my uncle, who's from like more of the north of England, and he was like, Kaitlin, the culture, because I was telling them that I went to visit my grandparents in Northern Ireland, and I was like, everyone just says good morning, like everyone chats to you, like you don't know them but everyone will speak to you, and I was like, I love that. And he went, that's normal in the north of England, Kaitlin, it's just the south, everyone's grumpy, no one speaks to each other. But living in London, the culture like in central, like in the school, is really different, and I could talk to anyone on any course because we've all come as individuals, which is so lovely. But actually living in London and living in halls without people who go to my university, no one speaks to each other, which is really sad.
It's all to do with community.
Yeah.
Because like,
Here we go, we're linking back.
yeah, but like you go to uni, it's like everyone's like, oh, we're all at the same university, therefore it's okay for us to be friendly to one another. But like in London, no one knows what everyone's about, so no one talks to one another. But it's like the second you see a Royal Central thing, you're like, oh, Central, yeah, mates. We don't know one another. Like, I can relate to you as much as someone else on the tube, but you're not going to have that conversation. And I feel like in smaller places, you get more community, which is why, like, if you're in a small town, everyone knows one another. People say hello to one another and that kind of stuff. But like, the more disconnected people get and the less community there is, the less communication.
I think building community is super important, not just like in person, but say if you're doing your fixed company, building community, doing a thing like a podcast, building.
Join the community, guys. Like, subscribe,
So if you're,
comment down below.
if you're this far
I'm
in,
such a good podcast host. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Um,
plug.
yeah, especially like that's why I like interviewing people from different countries, because then you build a diverse community as well.
Yeah.
And I would
That was
hate
very
if
good.
My community was like 90% men who are, 18.
All from the same background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be boring. But I think we've got a nice little range in our statistics.
Yeah, definitely. What do you want to plug? I know we're like 2.5 hours in, but
plugging stuff. Yeah, go and follow the Carnifolk stuff.
we'll put it in the description. I can do that.
Yeah, or actually, to make it difficult for you, Carnifolk. That's out right up there.
That's Josh's job.
Yeah. Are you zooming in so you can't see my hand?
No, I've zoomed out so I can see your hand.
Okay, yeah. Carnifolk. Pop that right there. At carni.folk.
We shall see.
And then,
Can't promise anything.
yeah. My name is Xander Cindery.
Yeah, that's right.
This has been Xander's injury. Can we just say one more thing before we go? This is actually Josh's birthday episode, so happy birthday, Josh.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Woo! We won't sing that.
No.
The people have sat through 2 hours. They don't need happy birthday.
That's
But
very true.
happy birthday, Josh.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Everyone
happy
comment
birthday.
down below. Happy birthday, Josh.
That's not good.
No,
The one person who makes
The
it.
one-
to the end.
yeah, whoever's made it this far in,
You know
better
One person
comment.
makes it. Happy birthday, Jacob.
Happy birthday, Jacob.
here's like the crazy thing though. Our 2.5 hour conversation, whatever it is, like
I'd
might listen to the whole thing.
and you are
That-
real if you've done
one
that.
Person, that's crazy to me.
We love you.
Yeah, we do. We actually
You deserve a prize. No, I genuinely think I could because it's been so interesting. I have technically been a viewer because I've just sat and watched this whole conversation,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed.
Like, you
Yeah.
did it willingly.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. But I also just like the both of you, so I have
It does help.
yeah,
Very sweet.
yeah.
I think what we were talking about was fairly interesting.
It was
Is there
interesting.
anything you wanted to like to say, or have we covered everything?
I think we've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, apart from that, if any of the Carney folk listen to this, big ups, big love to all the Carney family.
Yeah, big love to the Carney folk.
Carney gang, like, you
Me and
were
Josh can't wait to meet you all.
Yeah,
We're gonna come.
And also, if you want to get involved in anything like that, yeah, just
Go for it.
Slide
go
in,
for
yeah.
let's slide into the Carney folk. Just send a message. We're gonna be in London, Manchester, Bristol. Yeah, just say hello. Come get involved. It's completely open, and the more lovely little beans, the better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The more the merrier.
Yeah. Also, just go and do your own thing.
Yeah, do your own thing. That's the message.
I think we've talked a lot on this episode about people's like motivation to doing things, and I think at the end of the day, yeah, do your own thing, and using what we said, like have that influence maybe on your mentality of the way you approach it. And I think you just have fun with it.
Be happy, have fun, play games.
Be silly, play more.
Do you want to do an outro for me, Kaitlin?
Okay. I'm nervous now. Okay.
I'm
Well-
intrigued. Is this gonna be more slick than the intro?
Ouch.
Competition. We can
We'll add
stand.
it to our tally.
Yeah.
We can do a fake stand up at the end.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll exit. Josh can turn off the lights. Okay. Well, this has been the Movement Theories podcast. I have been briefly appeared, but I have been Kaitlin McCann. This has been Xander Cindery, and we have obviously had Joshua Cambridge. Now cameraman Joshua Cambridge. Please, well, full name to everyone else. Please like and subscribe and comment. Go follow all of our social medias, which I work very, very hard on the Instagram, the TikTok. Go and show some love, and go and check out Carnifolk and get involved in any of your local theatre community. Thank you for watching. If you've gotten this far, we are very impressed and we are very grateful. But yeah, see you next week. Bye.
Lots of love. Bye.